What's up, Max Path of Exile 2 video, and just now, PoE 2 posted new patch notes with a bunch of changes. These are in addition to the current patch notes. These are just came out, 26.5.26. In addition to that, we also got the entire brand new, or not brand new, but the updated skill tree with a bunch of new notables. And so in this video, we're going to be talking about the new patch and also a ton of the new nodes on the tree that we have never seen before, going over all of the changes. Hope you enjoyed the breakdown. Let's do this. So starting off, they nerfed the Iron Slippers node. We were using this on our Druid build. It would give you 3 armor per 1 energy shield on your boots, which is kind of crazy. Now it's only giving you 2 armor per 1 energy shield. They also cut Subterfuge Mask in half. We talk about that later, but big nerf there. They buffed up Bark Skin, so Bark Skin now gives you a whole bunch of extra energy shield lost as armor. So it goes up to 62% from 44, which is pretty nice. This is a really big nerf, and that is to Mark of Siphoning. Now, one of the issues in this game on most attack-based builds are solving mana. And most builds, at least the ones that I've made, use Mark of Siphoning in a mark, which allows you to leech elemental damage on marked targets. So if you put a freezing mark on an enemy, and then you shoot that enemy with any elemental skill, you just don't have mana issues. Super nice, solved a ton of issues. You would just get some mana on kill, and you'd be good to go for maps. They've now removed that. So Mark of Siphoning now causes enemies marked by your support skills cause you to leech mana equal to 8% of your physical damage attack damage. This specifically removes the elemental attack damage line. They've also added a Mark of Siphoning 2, which causes enemies marked by your supported skills cause you to leech mana equal to 8% of your physical attack damage. And the new thing is that enemies marked by your skills cause you to leech life. So they've changed this from leeching mana as Fizz and mana as elemental to mana as Fizz and life as Fizz. So, very bad if you were playing an elemental build. Now, there's still going to be ways to, like, solve mana issues. So I'm not too worried about this, but this was such a, like, a one-trick convenient solution for any sort of mana on bosses, especially if you had high plus levels and you're,
Okay, alright. We're poor.
you know, you're just shooting a bunch, causing a bunch of damage, you would just get your mana right back. So that is a big nerf. They also nerfed the Gravebind unique gloves. Now, I never used these, but apparently they were doing some pretty crazy things for group find rarity. So if you're, like, stacking up a bunch of rarity in a group, these were pretty crazy. Now, your other modifiers to rarity of items found do not apply, so nerf there. This is a huge change. Lesser, greater, and perfect jeweler orbs can now be used on items with skills on them to increase the number of sockets on the item's granted skills. Using a jeweler orbs on items with multiple skills will affect all skills on that item. They talked about, like, having this implemented in a podcast recently. It's actually going to be a thing. This is super cool because there's these new, like, unique weapons, such as the shield throw unique and, like, the Raven staff, that have these skills that you'd want to make full builds on, and you wouldn't have a way to, like, get that to be max rank unless you got, like, a level 20 to drop. Same thing with wands and staffs and all of these like, weapons that people were using the innate weapon skill on. Now you can just 6-link it. You do not need to find a level 20 version of that skill. So that's really awesome. Should make a lot of builds a whole lot more viable based off of those specific weapon things. And that's kind of the main stuff from the... oh, there's actually one more. There's one more big one. They fixed a bug where Chaos Inoculation overriding maximum life to 1 incorrectly affected calculations of stun and ailment thresholds for the player as well. The most notable manifestation of this was characters with the Chaos Inoculation Keystone passive skill allocated with some kind of heavy stun or stun threshold modifiers became immune to heavy stuns. Now, if you don't know what this means, basically, if you spec Chaos Inoculation, your max life would go to 1, but you'd become immune to chaos damage and bleeding. So you wouldn't have to worry about that at all. Chaos damage bypasses energy shield, so a lot of full energy shield builds would go this, and then you don't have to get any chaos res. However, your stun threshold and how quickly and how easily you get stunned is based off of your life. So if you have no life, then you get stunned really easily. There was a bug where if you spec this node, or any one node for stun threshold equal to percent of your energy shield, you'd then become basically immune to stuns. And so now that's going to be fixed and work correctly. Meaning that if you are planning on playing a Chaos Inoculation build, you most likely will actually have to spec or use things, charms, nodes and stuff so that you don't get heavy stunned. Probably not that big of a deal for spellcasters, but if you're planning on playing monk melee with Chaos Inoculation, I could see that actually being a large issue, because you're going to be getting hit a lot more than you would be on, like, a spellcaster. So definitely something to consider. So we're going to talk about the new nodes first, and then we'll get into the nerfs. So the main new nodes seem to be for companions. They said that they were going to be adding 19 new, like, companion-focused things for support for the new Huntress Ascendancy, the Spirit Walker. To go over a few of those. So they slightly reworked this wheel, which is like the big companion wheel. They shifted around Lifelong Friend, which your minions revive 35% faster if all your minions are companions. And the Node Nurturing Guardian, life recovery from your flask, also applies to your companions. In the current game, these two nodes are swapped. So you're going to be able to pick up Nurturing Guardian a little bit faster to have good healing on your minions. They also added all of these Bond of the Blank Animal nodes. These are all new. So Bond of the Viper, all of your attack damage is increased, but your companions also gain extra damage as Chaos with all of these nodes. And then Bond of the Mamba gives you 4% physical damage as extra Chaos, and your companions 12% damage as extra Chaos. And then the Bond of the Viper gives your companions a 40% chance to poison on hit with increased skill effect duration, which is pretty cool. Could make like a full poison companion build, and maybe even like recruit a bunch of like Viper-esque companions, which I think would be kind of cool. How strong that would be, I have no idea. They also added the Bond of the Cat. Your companions have increased movement speed, and you have reduced movement penalty while using skills. We've also got the Bond of the Ape, increased area of effect, and your companions have 30% increased AoE. Pretty sick one there.
Yeah, that's insane.
Bond of the Wolf, 6% increased attack speed, and your companions have a 50% chance to gain Onslaught on kill. So they should basically always have Onslaught, increasing their movement speed and attack speed. That one's really cool. We've also got Bond of the Owl, which is going to give you 6% of your damage as extra cold, and your companions gain 12% of damage as extra cold. There's a lot of just basically giving your companions a whole lot of damage as extra in this. So you could technically grab all of those and have your companions doing a whole bunch of extra damage of kind of every element, which is kind of cool. One of the larger changes is to Trusted Kinship. Now, currently, in-game, this looks like this. You can have two companions of different types. You have 30% less defenses, but your companions have +1 to each defense for every 2 of that defense that you have. Obviously, 30% less defense is a pretty tough pill to swallow, and they've totally changed that. Now it's you get 30%, you can have 2 companions, but you get 30% more reservation efficiency of companion skills and 20% less reservation efficiency of non-companion skills. So if you want to run a bunch of companions, you can do so easier, and then you're going to have slightly worse reservation for non-companion skills. But the biggest difference there is you're just not going to lose 30% of your survivability by clicking that, which makes that, I think, a pretty easy pickup for companion builds. There's also a very, very interesting 2 new nodes that have an effect that we've never seen before that has to do with command skills. I recently played a Disciple of Varashta command skill build. It was very cool.
It is dope.
Unfortunately, like there's only like a single kind of command skill node.
Yeah,
which
was right there.
is at your command.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was kind of lame. And it seems like they've added some potential ones to lean into that. So this is Puppet Master chance. 15% surpassing chance to gain a Puppet Master stack when you use a command skill. All of these nodes are increased effect of Puppet Master, increased duration of Puppet Master, surpassing chance to gain more stacks of Puppet Master, and then Puppet Master chance, 15% increased mana cost efficiency of command skills, +1 to maximum stacks of Puppet Master, which, by the way, this is totally new. We don't know what this does yet. And then there's another node for Effective Puppet Master. Effective Puppet Master, 35% surpassing chance to gain a Puppet Master stack whenever you use a command skill. Command skill, command skill. Now, we don't know what this is. What I'm really hoping it is, which would be absolutely insane if they make this a thing, is on like Disciple of Varashta or minion builds, you've got all of these different minions that all have their own command skills, and it's kind of a lot to keep track of all of their buttons and use all of their things. What I'm
It's true.
really hoping this is, which would be kind of insane, is a chance that when you have a stack of Puppet Master and you click a command skill, it uses all of your minions' command skills. I don't know what that is. If that's the case, it could just be like your minions deal more damage, but the fact that there's a whole new effect and the chance to gain this effect, I'm imagining would mean that it allows you to do something that doesn't exist because it's brand new. So I don't think it would be just like your minions deal more damage. That would be pretty lame. I'm hoping it's like you activate all of your minions' command skills, which would be awesome. So fingers crossed for whatever that is. But yeah, new Puppet Master nodes is a new Archon node. Now this, unlike some of the other stuff, was in the patch notes. This isn't the node, but Elemental Archon nodes give you like more freeze buildup, more flammability, more shock chance, 25% more elemental damage with your spells whenever you have an Archon buff. They did mention this in the patch notes once again, but we now can see where the Archon of Undeath is going to go. It's going to be connected up at the top right across from Enhanced Barrier. The notable is going to give you increased cooldown recovery rate for command skills and also minion damage. And then your Archon of Death, 15% chance of gaining Archon of Undeath when you use a command skill. Because this is so focused on command skills, I'm imagining it's going to be very specific to you dealing damage with minions versus like dealing damage with elemental stuff. Probably give your minions all a big buff. And some other cool effects. Sounds really cool, just another way to scale minion builds. They also added a bunch of recoup nodes. If you don't know what recoup is, basically when you get hit over the course of 8 seconds.
Yeah, they really only had like
recover a percentage
2,
of whatever
3
your
things.
recoup
It
amount
wasn't a
is.
lot.
So if you have
Like 2 little
10%
sections were
recoup
for
of
recoup.
damage
Maybe
taken,
4.
when you take a hit, you would recover 10% of the damage over the course of 8 seconds. They've added a lot of like speed of recoup effects.
That's
so
nice.
This whole like setup is all new. 8% increased recoup, 8% increased speed of recoup. Buffs on you expire 10% slower, 20% increased speed of recoup, increased speed of recoup, 20% increased speed of recoup, and debuffs on you expire 10% faster. That whole flow node is new. They also added the left ventricle for 20% increased speed of recoup. This is next to heart tissue, which did exist as well. There's a few other ones, but those are kind of the main ones that I noticed. Now let's talk nerfs, which they seem to have targeted some of the crit nodes that I don't believe they mentioned before. For example, Crashing Wave is now 25% increased damage if you've dealt a critical hit in the past 8 seconds. If we check the game currently, that is 36% increased damage. So that got adjusted. And there's a few other ones to mention that like probably aren't going to do too much. The real big kicker for any Huntress build, Monk build, Ranger build, unfortunately has to do with Subterfuge Mask. Now, Subterfuge Mask is, in my opinion, the absolute best survivability skill that you can pick for like endgame Monk, Ranger, Huntress. It gives you, or previously gave you, +2 to energy shield, or +2 to evasion per energy shield on your equipped helmet. So you'd get a helmet with 500 energy shield, and that would give you 1,000 evasion, which was crazy, super helpful, especially if you're running synergies like Ghost Dance and things like that. And as you can see, it is now +1 to evasion rating per 1 energy shield. So they actually nerfed that in half. It's one of the more substantial nerfs. As you can see, currently in game, it's +2 to evasion rating per 1 item energy shield on equipped helmets. Now, this is still like probably a must grab on any hybrid build. Even if you have a 400 energy shield helmet, still 400 evasion rating pretty easily. but it's not nearly as good as it was. Now, we are also getting a lot of buffs to evasion, so that should help with this. Like, you're probably, hopefully, net out to equal survivability. But the other kicker is that I think Energy Shield is going to be a little bit worse, especially Energy Shield values. So, like, this is probably nerfed even more. I don't know. The actual net result of how this is going to feel on our builds is probably a bit weaker. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be a really good node. So you still, I think, have to kind of pick it, especially if you're playing a hybrid build. And the very last thing to mention, in a recent interview, Jonathan was talking to Chris Wilson about Path of Exile 2, and he mentioned that they might be doing a secret kind of ascendancy with the Acolyte of Chayula, the same way that they did like Lich and Abyssal Lich. And if we go over to the Acolyte of Chayula skill tree, you'll see that there's these two nodes that are currently added that don't have anything associated with them. The devs, when they send out these files, can just kind of omit this, so that's probably why it's not here yet. But it does kind of slightly confirm what Jonathan was saying, that there are probably going to be a hidden ascendancy for Acolyte of Chayula to get like these like, you know, specific nodes. We don't know what these nodes are, but we do see them kind of in this file. You'll note that if we go over to Maxroll, those two nodes would be right off of Chayula's gift, and there's nothing here. And as you can see, if we look at Chayula's gift, that's the same node, and it's just got these two extra ones there. So kind of interesting, especially if you're planning on starting Monk. Guys, it's going to do it for the video. I know it's a bit of a longer one. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think of all these changes. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Peace.
All right, Mr. Moxie. And then we're going to watch this interview. It's like 2.5 hours, but we're just killing time today. We're not playing anything. What just happened? Okay, there we go.
So, welcome to Tavern Talk. Thank you for having this conversation with us, talking about 0.5, the reveal you guys have showed. And
Let's just...
did there come a point when you guys were developing it where you kind of were like, hey, okay, we have too much on the scale, like this is where we have to stop? Like, because I remember in the interviews, Mark was saying he was looking at notes, and you had so many notes that you got to a point where you're like, I don't even remember making these notes. You know, you kept cooking so much.
The problem that we had is that because we wanted to really make sure that the message was like the end game has totally changed, on some level we just had to do sort of everything. So yeah, even though we might have liked to make it smaller, we kind of honestly couldn't. Which isn't to say there wasn't like a bunch of stuff that we didn't end up cutting anyway, but still, it's been we sort of had to do something. And then, like,
I love the
kind of led to
GGG
this fact
team,
that,
man.
you know,
Like
they
Mark and
moved on to play
Jonathan,
what we
like
would hope would
just
be and that kind of thing as well. So
obviously
there's
as
stuff
much
like
as
that
they
that's kind of
can,
good
always
with
try to be
downsides.
open,
But overall, I
have
think it was really
conversations
important
with
because,
content
it's just a really
creators.
important change. Like,
Yeah.
it really does very fundamentally change how the end game feels.
I love Path of
And
Exile
I was
too.
even
I'm so
seeing
glad I got into
recently,
it.
Like, there are just a lot of people who they wouldn't play the end game of PoE 2 because it just doesn't have like, you need something to sort of like give them some direction, and we just didn't have that. And so now I've got people who are like friends, so they've like played through the PoE 2 campaign, but they've never really been an end game player. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, I actually am going to play this. You know, like that's been a thing that I've seen. So it's something that I'm like that I think was really important to do.
Do you think that that's primarily like the reason they didn't play the end game was because of a level of confusion of like, what do I do next? Or do you feel like you didn't have enough like things in it to make it interesting? Because I remember something you come back to like pretty continually when this point gets brought up is like, if an area feels like too big or like uncomfortable, that
Right.
a lot of times it's an indicator of not having enough things in it.
I think that can be the case, but I do think in this situation it really was more the direction. Like, you got to the end game before it opens up, and it's like, okay, well now I can just kind of go wherever, right? Like, there wasn't really you do need a quest line, like you do need something there, just to give you some form of understanding what to do. And I find even myself, I'm like way more interested in doing end game stuff right now than I was before. Yeah, like it helps a lot.
Would you say that this is a focus more of the idea of creating a getting off point, or is it more towards just creating a sense of direction? Like, which one matters the most, or is it like a mix of the two?
It really is a mix of the two. Like, both of those things are important. And we did, I think, before we got to developing 050, we were mostly talking in terms of giving people direction. But during 050 timeline, when was it? There was a moment, I can't remember when it was, Mark, but there was some moment where we were kind of like, we realized like the problem with PoE 2 right now is that you don't know when to stop playing, and therefore you have the situation and people just get like more and more bitter about like the fact that they're just doing the same thing again. Like there just wasn't that getting off point thing was just super important. So that was definitely an 050 time horizon when we realized that, and that's also been one of those things where we sort of somewhat later in development we realized that we had to make the time it took to do the stuff shorter. Like it getting longer and longer was actually a problem as well. Like we actually had something where the amount of time it would take to finish it was too high. And that's even been something we've changed in the last like few weeks even more. So previously we kind of assumed that it would be fine to have like, I can't remember the number there was. There was probably like 25, 30 maps, something like that in each of the areas for the individual leagues. And you had to do all of those in order to get all the points for a league tree. And we were kind of like, that seemed fine at first. Like we sort of thought that would be okay. But actually the amount of time that an average user takes to do 30 maps is actually quite long. And in practice when you're playing it, it just kind of felt like there was too much there. So then what we decided to do is make it so that when you kill the pinnacle boss, you get an extra 6 points. So basically, and you can effectively not do 6 of the maps. And then if you go into the infinite and get more keys and kill it again, you basically get 6 points. So you can effectively complete it 2 ways. You either do all the maps one by one, or you kill the pinnacle boss more times to get more points that way. And effectively that means that the time taken to actually do one of those league trees has been reduced. And so we're really focusing on basically just making sure that it doesn't feel like it takes too long to do an individual league. So you can make sure that you that the cleanup phase part does not feel annoying.
That's gonna be nice.
Imagine
That's
being able to build a map
because
with your
my
name
last
on it, just by thinking about it.
disciple of
Meet
Varash
base
or whatever it's called,
44.
Sure.
Sork minion
We,
build, I did feel like that because it's the
think we
furthest I've ever
now-
gotten in game. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, having to farm
I see
splinters
you're
and
discussing
other
with others,
stuff.
but I think I'm
Yeah,
the same, where
that's
I'm gonna
that's nice. It
pass-
just sounds better. It just sounds better.
I'm gonna get to the pinnacle boss, kill the pinnacle boss. I'm gonna get fast.
Kind of cutting out a little bit there. I don't know if it's just on my end, but you're kind of cutting in and out a little bit
That's
on
on
your.
me as well. Yeah.
Is this better?
Seems better.
Everything working here, testing? Yeah, not sure. Anyway, we're at the point now where when I'm playing, and I've seen this a few other more high-end players in the office as well, I think we really wanted to get to the point where we, as a good player, you should think, okay, I'm going to get to the pinnacle boss, kill the pinnacle boss for each league, including the fortress, and then go into the infinite. There's something about wanting to do that, and when the completion time for everything was so long, there was like, okay, this is starting to feel too grindy, and I want to get out there. I want to get more pinnacle kills and all of that. And I'm feeling like I'm having to. I guess it's that not wanting to have to turtle for too long. That the same thing the original tower mechanic had, and it started to feel that way, where it's like I want to get out there, but I can't, and I want to move to the next league, but I can't. And so yeah, it's at this. Like I think the number of towers when we first did the presentation to was 8 on the fortress, and each tower meant every time you killed the arbiter, you could complete a section of maps. Now it's 5. So like we've been shortening that. And I think the number of maps. I think the total number of maps you have to run to finish the fortress, if you were to just shortest path then go farm the infinite, is now like it's probably actually less than if you were to finish the whole fortress, which is interesting because at first I was like, surely for doing the whole fortress should be less maps total, but actually just due to the fact that you don't have determinism when out there, and you're finding other things, you're on other little kind of effectively side quests, it does end up being that you kind of want it to be less maps overall because you're constantly having to do all these other things while in the infinite. So it's at this nice fine line now where it is balanced. It's feeling a lot better, whereas like before it was definitely, and immediately from a handful of our staff that were playing, they're just like, holy crap, this is taking forever. So it's in a real good spot. And then yeah, as Jonathan said, now just even all the leagues have the same thing. So only the fortress had the shortcutting, I guess you could say. Now every single one of the leagues has it to some degree.
Nice.
It's feeling really good, for sure. And yeah, hopefully we'll have to see, because it's that kind of thing as well, where when you play it a second time, you're going to have a little bit of a different feeling about it. And so we'll have to see how that comes as well once we have another league start at some point.
Is that sort of
But
what?
that's usually how.
Go on,
Sorry.
bud. Go on.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, that's kind of like the whole cadence of playing something for the first time, because I think that point one was the early access launch was like one of the most exciting things ever. Everything was new. We got to experience everything. The second time we play through it, that's when we go nitpicking. Like, you know what, that area is a little too large, or that issue there. You start being, you know, seeing the downsides of things you got annoyed with on the first playthrough, which was overshadowed by the positive things. I'm just curious if this is the reason you guys kind of want to have both of the last acts coming for 1.0 instead of sooner. Is that the same kind of reasoning there?
It's not. That isn't the reason, although that will be an advantage, I suppose. But the actual reason is just that we think that 1.0 needs to have something that, you know, like is like there's a lot of people, especially if you're talking about the sort of more casual audience, who the thing they're interested in is campaign stuff, and so by finishing the campaign in 1.0, those people are just going to be attracted to sort of make that release like a good release. And at the same time, I don't think there's like a lot of risk there for us in terms of like we know how to make an act now, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not going to be one of those things where we're like, you know, we have to make sure we're testing this because it's gonna, you know, it's gonna go off the rails or something like that. Like, we know we can do it, so therefore we feel quite safe just putting something like that in 1.0. So yeah, that's kind of like the ultimately it comes down to that. And also, like, right now, the other thing as well is, like, if we hadn't have added the interludes, we'd probably be feeling pretty differently about this. But because we've got the interludes there to kind of mean that you don't have that whole thing which we originally were going to have during the entirety of early access, which is where you'd have to repeat parts of the campaign. Because we don't have that, it kind of means that, like, we don't have that thing dragging us down and making the early access feel worse as well. So but I think the thing that has been interesting, yeah, is like all that sort of campaign replayability stuff as well. That's been something that I'm really hoping that people will see that we've made some pretty big strides there this time as well. Like, the replaying thing,
Nice.
the more times you replay it, the more annoying certain things get. And I saw some frickin' short recently that DM made with you like being like, oh yeah, I hit it as soon as Act 3. And actually, that was the moment, by the way, when I saw that. Is like, I'm gonna fix this frickin' lever thing that everyone's complaining about. You know, like, it's actually so
Hell yeah.
You know, because I'm like, I don't want that to be the video that I'm seeing again. You know, that one. So yeah, then that was like one of the few things in the campaign replayability section I patch noted specifically, because I was like, people can be happy to see that thing. But there are stuff like that all around the place, right? Like, we're improving a bunch of things around, and like then there's just some areas that were there were some areas that were too big and stuff like that, and like sort of annoying layouts. I mean, like just some simple examples is there was like, after you kill Viper, there was like a little bit of extra level after killing Viper.
Yeah.
And now, after you kill Viper, it's like directly onto the exit to the next zone, and it's just stuff like that all over the place that we're doing, you know, just
To
like
the Apex of
streamlining
Filth,
and
because
speeding
you go to the
things up.
Apex
So
of Filth
I'm hoping
after
Act
that.
3 will feel a lot better now than what it has in the past. Like, I think it's a
I
pretty
like that.
significant improvement.
I like that.
But the other one as well is like, and this one, so I had an interesting experience recently where the build that I was playing was like not good, and it's been a little while since I played a really bad build. And like, the monster density and the interludes when your build is bad is actually pretty damn terrible in terms of like the ability to clear through them. Like, it was oppressive. And at some point I realized, like, I was playing in an area called the Stones of Searle, which is like that one with the standing stones, and I was like, at what point did we get it to the point in the interlude where you no longer have to move? Like, you never use movement. Like, every single thing you're doing is just attacking. And then because there's so many monsters, like, you're just attacking your way from one place to another, and it just like never ever ends. And I'm like, this is actually kind of like, this is a grind. Like, this is actually not good. Like, campaign should not be like this. And so then it sort of forced me to be like, okay, there's some serious issues here. And we actually found, and this one's actually a little bit, I don't like fully know that this is why this happened, but I think what happened was that there was some things about the pack density in campaign where we had like the last few areas get to a certain density. What used to be the last few areas being like, you know, the last couple of areas of Act 3, and then some of that stuff kind of continued on like deeper into the campaign than whereas it should have like dialed back again after being higher in those last few areas. And so I think that's probably what happened. But it just meant that some of those areas and especially interlude just got ridiculous. So that's something that
he played
I
through
don't
on a
think I would've
shitty
realized
build, and he was like,
if I
no,
wasn't playing such a
we gotta
bad
change
build.
this, dog.
Because but I suspect that a lot of players are getting that experience. So that's been something I really want to try and address a little bit more. And I think that there's even some of that going on. At the start of
W
Endgame as
devs,
well.
bro.
There's a few things there.
Fuck,
that,
man, they're so good.
That if you're got a crap build, like you don't notice it if you don't, if you've got a good build, but if you've got a bad build, it can actually be really oppressive. So like another one recently, I don't know if you want me to talk about this, about Mark, about the whole poise thing with powerful bosses. Like, are you good for me to mention that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so here's an example of something. So I was playing something that required freezing. It was the actually it was the werewolf freeze combo, right? And I encountered it, but as I said, my build was crap. I was not building it well, and I got to a powerful boss to get the map upgrade, and I was like, okay. Normally, plus 100% life would kind of like, you know, sure, it makes the boss fight twice as longer, but for some reason I was hitting this powerful boss and it made the fight feel like 3 times or worse. Like it was like really, really hard, like way harder than I expected. And it took a little while of asking around to try and find out what was going on here. But effectively, because my DPS was so dependent on getting the freeze, and we had a thing where when the boss gets life is doubled, effectively the poise thresholds, which we use for calculating, you know, like resistances to things like getting frozen, got doubled as well. It meant that effectively my DPS was getting like, maybe not halved, but you know, something like halved due to the fact that I wasn't getting the freeze. So my damage was half. The monster had double life, so it's effectively taking me 4 times longer to kill this boss.
Jesus.
And I was literally running out of flash charges. And just like not being able to beat this thing. I'm like, I've hit a progress blocker upgrading from like T1 to T2 maps here. Like, this is a bad situation. And I'm like, yeah, sure, my build's crap and I could fix that. But like, why? Like, my crap build should be able to do this, right? Because this is one of those things where, you know, like, if you're talking T1 maps, like, this is something that an average player should not find as the roadblock, you know? And yeah, so it's like seeing, there's still
That's a
things
good
like
point.
this around that we haven't realized. That we just need to uncover and improve, and like this is one of those things where it really is quite context dependent in the situation where you find something like that, you know, and like, and to give you another example of a random one I ran into just yesterday, is okay, so the boss in the Bloodwood, I was fighting it. And I was talking to my friend who was sitting next to me, who was, you know, like every weekend, you know, he'll come over and we'll talk about various things. And I'm like, he was like, oh, that boss health bar is really long. And I'm like, well, how long should it be? Like, how long should it take to kill a boss? This kind of thing. This was the conversation. He's like, oh, for this boss, I'd say, because it doesn't have any interesting abilities at all, that it should be a lot shorter. I'm like, this boss does have a bunch of abilities. This is the Devourer. Like, what the hell? And then I realized, hang on a second, the Devourer and the Bloodwood, none of its freaking abilities are working. Like, it just sits there and freaking attacks you, and it doesn't like do the moving around thing. I'm like, how did I never notice this before? Like, and like the problem here is like someone who set that area up, they just forgot to put the markers in. This is what I'm assuming, right? I haven't actually looked into it, but I'm assuming they just forgot to put the markers down that control the place where that boss can move. And like, you look at something like that, and you're like, and it's like, it's so easy as a higher end player to fail to notice stuff like that, because it's one of those things you only run into when your build is crap and when it's taking you longer and that kind of thing. And so
That's
yeah,
so
it's
interesting.
so hard as a developer to notice this stuff, quite frankly. Like, and you just lose sight of it. So yeah, the hope is just that, you know, that we can actually find all
Again,
this stuff
W
and
devs.
fix it. Like, it does. It just you know, it just takes a lot of iterations to sort of actually end up noticing stuff like that.
So I want to follow up on. I want to follow up on.
You go with first.
Yeah. I want to follow up on one point you said there, because I'm actually really interested about, which is you said you realize you had a bad build, right? And then you were feeling swarmed because you got a bad build. You're getting swarmed by mobs, right? So how do you come to the diagnosis of when it's like, okay, my build is bad, but also like part of the problem is I'm getting swarmed, as opposed to like, okay, maybe some of these skills aren't really in the position where we feel like they should be in order to clear the mobs. When do you decide that it's the content is the issue as opposed to the skill you're utilizing?
My
That's a good
first
question.
reaction there was to compare effectively default attacks, because the werewolf build I was using was like shred, and like, yeah, there's stuff that like there's stuff that I should have done for supports in order to make that better and so on. But we just sort of like looking like the first port of call was go to go to designers who know about like getting the numbers right, and basically say like, is my build okay? Is the numbers right in terms of comparison? Like, you just have to get that information right. And like we decided, you know what, like, it is like what you've got here with your build isn't good, but in terms of the underlying skills, it is okay. Like, the numbers are fine. So like that was an investigation, and then there's the question, okay, like your build is bad, but are your items just bad? And no, they were, your items are fine. It's like, here's a look at your passive tree, and it's like, okay, so my passive tree was like bad in the way that like you could definitely be a lot better, but I was kind of on purpose this time taking a bit more of a defensive approach. Like I was like, if I'm the kind of person who's going to allocate way more defenses and way less damage, and just like sort of see how that goes for me, that was like kind of part of what I was doing there. So yeah, like I wanted to make sure that it can be okay even in that situation. Yeah, like there's also this other situation where if you're a good player, then because you're hitting the whole screen, like the amount of monster density in a situation like that isn't necessarily, or at least like depending on a build, right? Most builds that are good have some kind of, they've got big AoE clear, right? Like they have the ability, like it doesn't necessarily matter whether there's like 40 monsters on screen or 15 monsters on screen in terms of like their ability.
Yeah, you're just gonna nuke the.
So it sort of matters more for
gonna
a build
nuke.
that doesn't have that as much, which I wasn't doing as much. So in the situation where you're a character like that, then the only thing that's the extra monsters are really doing is just giving you more drops in experience. And so we sort of have to make sure that like we're able to make sure that that's not broken. But I do think that we don't need, quite the level of spamminess that we had, in terms of just like tiresomeness. Like even something as simple as like there's a moment between one fight to the next where your energy shield can recover, like just literally something as simple as that can be like something that can matter a little bit there. Like if it's just absolutely continuous, then there is a problem there, especially during campaign.
One other follow up about this point, then I'll pass it off to Ghazi. As you,
I'm gonna pause right there and just talk about that real quick. That's what I really like about Abyss. Abyss gets insane when you spec into it. Even right now, like Abyss right now is great. I don't see them changing it at all. Like it's so good. You just leads you into like a more intense fight as you invest points into it, and it's the best, one of the best feeling
we're kind of
leagues.
purposefully taking a more defensive approach, and I'm kind of curious at what realizations you came to. Like, what was your conclusion about making the build? I'm like, I'm going to heavily, more focus on defenses this time, as opposed to, damage on the tree. Like, what was your experience like with that?
Well, I mean, the thing with defense that's really hard to solve is that it's way harder to appreciate defense when you allocate it than damage. Like it can be quite, like it does save you, but it's really hard to know that. And actually, I've got another thing a little bit with Runic Ward here as well, which I noticed as when I was doing this, which is that so I had some Runic Ward, and Runic Ward obviously, you get to one life, and then it saves you and so on. But that's another one of those things that's really hard to appreciate. And I'd look down at my life sometimes, and I'd notice that my Runic Ward was like halfway filled. And I'm like, okay, so at some point there, I would have died, and I just didn't know that. Because like, I'm like flasking or whatever, so I've got like, I've got like a half health at the point where I look. But yet my water's down as well. It's like, I actually didn't appreciate the fact that that ward had saved me. So then I was thinking about this, and I'm like, we actually need something like an audible, like, oh, my ward, I've lost my life, my ward is broken. Like we need some kind of sound to indicate that, to sort of say that like, you actually got to the point where that ward helped you, so you actually can appreciate the fact that the defense worked. But then I was like, hang on a second, why do we not have a sound for energy shield breaking? Like, how have we gotten to this point and we don't have a sound like that? And then I actually looked into it, and it turns out we do have that sound. There is a thing there. It's just that because it happens when you get hit, and because when you're getting hit, there's a lot of sound going on. There's immediately this, like the thing where effectively you don't hear it, right? You might as well not hear it. And what we really need is a sound that's more like when you get heavy stunned. There's like, sorry, not when you get heavy stunned. When you heavy stun a monster, there's like sort of sound that's quite distinctive that kind of cuts through everything that you sort of like learn to hear. I really need to sound like that when your energy shield breaks, because that's a moment when you should be thinking, oh shit, like you need that moment. And I think that having that audible sound, like we actually do need to lean into
WDevs,
those
bro.
kind of things. But like, there's not like necessarily a realistic sound, but it needs to be a sound that can cut through all the other stuff that you're hearing, so that you just sort of know that you've hit that moment. And that's the kind of thing that can really make you appreciate defensive layers, is like just more of those cues. Now, I'm not sure how you do that for something like armor or like, things like that. Like there's like evasion, even like ideally you would be able to feel when you had more evasion versus not, and right now you just kind of can't. But I do think that it's something that you need to do to make those defenses be more appreciated, because they do work. It's just that you often don't appreciate that they do.
We are finally ready to show off AUK minutes.
All right, chat. I'll be right back. I'm gonna get some water. I'm gonna stretch my legs real quick. I'll be right back. still gonna be interesting, right? Like, cause it's got the extended cut. I was like, what? Untie ya. Untie ya. Who knows? Eventually, maybe they'll have like a director's cut. There's no DVDs anymore. There's only these are both. They're both technically Blu-rays, but it's just how they print it on the. This gives you the ability to download this anywhere, so like on your phone. Yeah. Yeah. Remember that, wasn't it? All right. But yeah, I saw the extended cut and it's 4K. I was like, yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. Alexa, put our lights off. All right. Well, happy birthday, day 4. All right, I'm gonna go back to streaming and watching videos. Okay. All right, Jet. Oh shit! I forgot my water. Oh yeah, because I was gonna look that. Okay.
I have a few things on your build, by the way, which I honestly think your passive tree is 100% fine. I don't even think it could be that much better. I think it's completely good. Your gear, completely fine. And by the way, and like because I was looking at your character and I was like, when you're clearing, you're quite tanky. It's appreciable. It's fine. And then so I was like, okay, the gear is good. The tree is fine. Like, sure, it could be better, but like, you know, on a level that honestly shouldn't be necessary. I was like, you are defensive. Like when you're playing, your character's not just like, you know, up and down in life all the time. It's like quite consistently, you know, if you're on full life, and it's certainly you have decent armor, decent energy shield. It's working. But yeah, it was interesting. I think you said to me at that point, because I was like telling you, I was like, you're fine. Like, what are you talking about? And then you were like, what did you say? You said, what? Okay, if it's not my character, what do I have to change as a person in order to be able to do it? Well, honestly, the biggest flaw you had was just your support gems. That was the biggest actual issue. But it's like you didn't do the wrong thing there. You just didn't do necessarily the right thing. Like, you just did what was intuitive. And so there's some highlighting there, and you know, it's like, because you said you followed the recommended supports for Shred.
So that is the thing that
like,
we're doing specifically, yes.
And I was like, you did, but you were also the developer that said what they were. And so you could have made it. There's a question of did you make a wrong decision as a player, or did you make a wrong decision as a developer? And there's an interesting thing there. So I'm trying to assess which of those went wrong. And so then it's kind of like, okay, sure, those fixed and made it a bit better, but we did make a pretty hyperactive set of changes based on your play experience. Because when you were like, what do I have to change as a person? It's kind of like, well, honestly, you should be able to kill this boss. You should be able to get further, and this is too hard and isn't working correctly. And then there were a number of encounters, and it was actually quite interesting to because I just watched you play for like 4 hours, and I was just like writing stuff down the whole time of just like, you know, because it is true. I don't have a relatable personal experience to what was happening there. Like, I would normally be in a substantially better position to just have a bit either via more planning or again, I don't put in the wrong supports. And even when you were like, what are the right supports? I was like, oh, just search for this. And then it's like, how do you even know to look for that if you didn't know to look for that? So there's a bunch of interesting things here where, yeah, it identifies when you are watching someone with a bad build, be it an in-game or IRL one, I guess. I can't really. You kind of like, you know, what's actually wrong here, and it is true that it is quite hard to relate with, especially on like a personal level. So I'm quite good at, when I observe, I'm quite good at seeing things that people often don't see, as well. And but yeah, it's been a really fun amount of like really looking at the early in-game, really iterating on it. And I've had the same from a bunch of other developers as well, a bunch of the designers that Jonathan's also been talking to, where they're just like, it's been really fun just getting like, here's the list of problems every day that Jonathan's run into, and then just iterating on them. And they're all so fundamental. They're all like, and I think this is something I want to stress, and goes back to, it's something I mentioned to Ziggy as well with respect to like even just the defenses on the tree. Like there's just fundamentally missing things. Like, and this is a really important thing that, you know,
WDevs,
I would
man.
say the in-game not having goals is a fundamental problem, but I would go as far as the things like the balance go, the basics, the life, the poi, all that thing that Jonathan was talking about. We honestly haven't hit the fundamentals, and this is why, and in the monster density, and this is why it's really important between 050 and release, that we're not like adding, and we can actually go, okay, like we need to just make the baseline actually the quality it needs to be. And it's really, really hard to do that when you're making what we just did for 050. Like, you'll notice it's, I don't want to say it's void of balance changes, of course, but it doesn't reach the standards of probably what people expect. And that's just because we were making all the new stuff. So hopefully now with everything, filled everything in, we actually get to go back and assess all of those fundamentals about the passive tree. You start with the really core things, the base skills, the base passive tree. They're like, you know, you don't get into too much of the nitty gritty straight away and all the multipliers and combo pieces that come together of what makes a build crazy. It's like really that baseline, life of monsters, damage of monsters, defenses of the player, and via the passive tree, base items. Like, I honestly think that the base items of, like, say, weapons aren't in a good enough spot. There's just a bunch of implicits that a weapon has an implicit and its damage is penalized, and the implicit is just trash. And it's like, why is this even here? It's not interesting. It's not fun. It's just a bad weapon to find. And there's still a bunch of that. And it's just like, that's our lowest level thing. Like, everything else is built on top of that, and we haven't even got that base thing entirely perfect yet. So
They're so open about it too. I love that.
We're going to go a bit feral with it, but I really just want to make sure, yeah, we're addressing all of these fundamentals now that we've got, which hopefully will make, you know, I don't think Jonathan should have to change much. I think the balance is just wrong, and I think that he should be able to kill that boss, and now he can, by the way, just address that immediately. But it's like, it seems like such an obvious thing, and it's like, how the hell have you not done this? But just because we've been producing so much content, like, and I don't even just mean for this patch, it's just been like crazy developing this game, the amount of stuff we're making. It's really hard to actually go, okay, now let's get it to the right spot. And a lot of people compare it to a lot of people compare it to PoE1, and they're like, yeah, but the PoE1 tree has this and this and this, and, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, I remember iterating on that for like 8 years personally. So it's like, you know, there's a bit of a time disparity here, like with our new philosophy. So we will be able to do it. We'll be able to do it pretty quickly. I'm not saying it's going to take 8 years, and we'll be able to get a hell of a way towards perfection, I would say. That balance is ever perfect, as I like to say. But yeah, it's going to be bloody nice now that we've got this absolute behemoth of a patch, you know, coming to a conclusion. Not to say there won't still be stuff to fix around that, but that's part of that as well, to be able to actually go and look at, okay, let's figure out what kind of person, what kind of build, what kind of character actually should be able to get to what point of the end game, the campaign, etc. Like, what are the mistakes people are making? What is the flaws in their builds that shouldn't be flaws? be it the recommended gems, be it the base skill damage, be it itemization, passive tree, everything, and just getting all of that as refined as possible. Which is exciting, by the way, because I find that stuff to be some of the more fun work. So it's kind of...
What's the...
You know,
Go on, Gazi.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, listening to the both of you talking about this, it's obviously we're expecting this, but it really sounds like there's a ton of minor adjustments from the veterans players' perspective, but might be large changes for newer players' perspective that is coming to the 0.5 update that is not necessarily in the patch notes. Something I was really curious about to hear from the both of you was what portion of this update do you guys predict to like make the largest beneficial impact for the player's experience? Because we heard from Jonathan talking about his situation there. Are we talking about changes in that sense, in the campaign playthrough, or are we talking about Infinite Atlas? I just want to hear your thoughts on your prediction on the most beneficial impact for new player experience.
If you're talking about just for new players, I definitely think that it's going to be the sort of early in-game, like monster density, like things around there, like late campaign, early in-game monster density, things like, just, I mean, we were just talking today. Okay, so here's another random example of a thing that we want to try and do. I hope it'll get an 050, but I think it's going to be a big deal, which is that, like, there's another one of those realizations of, like, I'm fighting a rare, it's got, like, a shit ton of mods on it, and I'm like, if I just stop, like, fighting for a second here, just, like, put on God mode and just watch this rare. Like, I'm just going to look at what this rare is doing right now, if I'm not killing it. And there is a fucking endless amount of bullshit spewing forth from this rare. And I'm like, there actually is no capability to have any gameplay, like, counterplay to this thing beyond just tanking it, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really able to dodge it. There's so much crap coming out of this thing that, like, effectively my defenses have to be good enough, and there's really nothing else that I would be able to do about it. And like as essence monsters in particular, I believe it was an essence monster that I was looking at the time, and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, we need to do something here, right? Like, it shouldn't be that when you get a bunch of these mods on there that so right now, there's all the different effects that can happen. So we call them daemons. They're like the things that sit there and cast, like, like when you get like the circles of lightning damage or whatever the hell it is, just like various things like that trigger from a rare. Like, every time you add one of those, it doesn't like slow down the rate of the others, and that's like a thing we want to do, effectively make it so that the more of those that go on the monster, like, it doesn't, it's not that it like that it casts the same number of them as what it normally casts. Like, it would have to increase, but it shouldn't increase where like you get 2 mods and now it's double the number of those effects, because otherwise there's just no ability to get any kind of counterplay with that. So we need some kind of thing that can control, like, when lots of mods go on a rare, that it doesn't just turn into an absolute shit fest of like random spam. So like, this is another kind of one of those like fundamental things to identify, and like we'll try to get that info 050. But I think that one of those things is those are the kind of things that I really do think affect new players, because there is a level beyond which of like screen like covering crap that you just kind of give up on it, and now it's like, yeah, it really is just a build check. Like, I'm not going to dodge this. I'm not going to actually try to even do that. It's like, so now my build just has to be able to tank it, or that's it. That's once again another thing another one of those fundamentals like that.
This came up a while back. This came up a while back for essences, more so because, again, it is a thing then veteran players are noticing a lot more, where they're like, okay, especially that Silent Caverns, I think it is, unique map, right? And you're like, okay, there's now, this one monster with 6 essences, and we're like, yeah, what we should be doing is implementing like a system where there's like, one or two of the daemons, as Jonathan explained it, one of the kind of more hidden skills that are outputting, the effects that are going on, they occur on a specific cooldown, and the more there are, the longer the cooldown is, and there's some whole system for it that we wanted to do. But like, that was an example of where we checked the, obviously the more extreme case, but then if you actually just come back to fundamental monster mods, like it's even a monster that only has 4 mods, for example, and 3 of them happen to be something where it's like just spamming a bunch of stuff. And the other thing is, each of those just has their own independent cooldown. And so the monster, and let's say it happened to get 3, and each of those cooldowns is, say, 10 seconds. Well, it's going to do all 3, and then wait 10 seconds, and then do all 3, and then wait 10 seconds. So that gets a different thing, where at least you get the wait. But if it happened to be that, let's say there was a 5, a 10, and a 15-second cooldown, or some numbers like that, it's all of a sudden now it's like just skill, and then you're like, okay, well, when do I actually get to DPS? So it kind of varies a bit, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's also just resulting in a bunch of just spam all over your screen. And it gets so much worse at the high end, like to the point where, and this is part of what contributes to the, like, as you said, you just need to be able to survive it. And if you can't, and it results in these things where like, I died to something, there was effects everywhere, and now I'm dead. Something happened.
That happens all the
but
time,
honestly,
bro.
again, that's just because
Gazzy, he's feeling that too, bro.
3 or 4
That's
mods.
funny as fuck.
Well, you can get more than that. So
I died to
right?
something.
All of a sudden now you've just got this barrage of onslaught of emissive, flashbangs going on your screen, and hopefully you survive. So it is a problem, but it's one of those things where it's really easy to look at the extreme cases and just be like, obviously we need to address this. And when we come up with some plan, and then you kind of go, well, it is affecting only the top end, so is it as important as these other fundamentals? But then you actually go, okay, let's look at this problem from not the top end perspective, and you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely still a problem. And so that's a good one to get highlighted, and then you can address it, and it turns out it just fixes it for everyone. So yeah, we're hoping to even do something about that this week specifically.
On the same topic of that, is like, here's another one I just happened to notice recently as well, which was that, like, I was playing some maps and I realized, hang on a minute, I feel like in the last 10 maps I've run, every single one of them had a mod in it that caused curses to be going off. Every single one of them. And I'm like, so just that means that your entire experience of the map, even when you're not fighting anything, there's just like circles appearing on the screen all the time. I'm like, and so I asked someone about this, and they were like, oh yeah, the reason for that is because there's a bunch of curse mods, but because they're all weighted the same as all the normal mods, it means that like the overall weighting of just any curse, if you look at it that way, is very high. And so the answer is just divide all the weightings of those curse mods so they're just less common, right? So now you don't have that thing, because like I feel like it shouldn't necessarily be that every frickin' map you're running has got these circles appearing like that. So like, there's just stuff like that. Like it's just there's just lots of little things like that. But I don't know why it's like it can be hard to notice that stuff unless you're really thinking about it. And like when you're going in with the mindset of like, okay, like what are we doing to reduce the spam? Like when you're actually playing, you have to.
This is also the difference between a developer playing their game a lot to like learn more about it and not. Diablo, I'm looking at you.
It takes a little.
Maybe
while
they play it. I don't know.
As you go through, of like
these
what
guys
is
play
actually
it.
The cause here. Yeah, like there's a lot of things we can still do. So yeah, that is a bit of a kick that we're on right now. Is the like try to reduce the spam a little bit. Ideally without sort of hurting the top end cases where people want to make sure that they're getting the monsters that they need and all that kind of stuff like that. But I think that part of what also brought it to a head a little bit is that because the tree adds so much now, we have to be really careful with the with the stuff, because it can get out of hand pretty quick. So that's something that we have to care a lot about.
We've definitely had to reevaluate what our base levels are versus what our without like really going, okay, we just want everything to be meh. Like we still want the excitement, you still want the thing where you can spec into all these things and create these crazy situations to happen. But yeah, with the tree being a lot larger and the Atlas Master System and all of this, it's like we've certainly had to reevaluate the base simply for that, just from a like, okay, if we had just kept the same base and added all that, then all the investment would end up having to be quite low, because you just can't have every single map being an absolute clusterfuck. So, reevaluating all of that is also helping, honestly, with that just onboarding into maps thing anyway, where you're not just like overwhelmed with like 8 things going on that you haven't even seen before. Like, what the fuck is even happening? Like, what's this purple thing here, and this blue thing here, and this green thing here, and this yellow thing here, and you're like, you don't even know what they are because nothing's told you what they are necessarily. So, I think going back to your actual question you had, which was the onboarding for new players, even though it's weird to think about new players in the case of Endgame.
All right.
But our hope is that they can get there. What I did see, and I've seen this with personal friends, even my brother and stuff, they got to Endgame. He's like, I don't know, I just ran a couple maps and now I'm done, I guess. I'm finished. So I'm hoping that they get there and stick it out and actually have that goal. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't immediately run into brick walls, and can actually play through and finish the campaign finish the end game as if it was just a continuance of the campaign. Honestly, like there kind of doesn't necessarily need to be a like break in the story necessarily so much where they can just be perceived as the same thing ultimately.
It's funny that you mentioned that because one of the topics we wanted to cover in this interview was about the Fortress and Endgame Atlas. And one of the initial questions we had there is to talk about the Fortress. You talk about onboarding people to the endgame, right? And the Fortress itself, it has its areas inside the Fortress. They're sort of pre-juiced, and the Fortress is required for gaining your Atlas passive points, and also has some pinnacle bosses in it. Like, is this area what you envision players to head to first when they go out there? Clear it out in its entirety, then go out to engage with league mechanics? Or is it intended to be your sort of first endgame focused type of content, but you can deviate away from it? And the follow-up to this would be, is this supposed to be an extension of the campaign to be sort of a tutorial of the endgame before people are expected to go to the Infinite Atlas?
Well, there's a few things going on here. So number one is I do expect that the Fortress is going to be the first in-game system that people engage with. It doesn't have to be, but I think that it will be, and that's seen by the fact that it's the first quest we give you, and it's kind of like the largest visible thing going on, right? So the very first thing you get is like there's a tower that pops out, and Duyani's like, hey, go do that, and that's like 3 maps away, right? So like it's guaranteed the tower is the 3rd map that you do, assuming that you head in that direction. And then it's like 3 or maybe 4 maps more than that until you get into the Fortress. So like it's pretty, you know, like we're onboarding you pretty easily into that thing. So I suspect a lot of people do that. And yes, the pre-juicing is definitely a nice thing because, the nice thing we get to do there, by the way, is that so in the Fortress, like it's not most of the maps, but it's like a very large percentage of them, because you can pick where you go. Like you effectively get like pre-juiced maps. But the nice thing is it's like one mechanic at a time. Like when you get those mechanics in those maps, it's like because it's at the start. You know, you have an allocated Atlas point, so it's not happening all the time. You get a situation, you get to experience the feeling of like, okay, here's what it would be like if I like had a bunch of wisps, and here's what it would be like if I had a bunch of strongbox and that kind of thing. You get to sort of experience that right away. But yeah, as I said, one at a time. And then as you go through the Fortress, you're obviously adding more of that content that once you've experienced it to your maps, you get to kind of like juice it more yourself. And so by the time you're done with the Fortress, you know, you're going to have like, you know, the not necessarily, probably not the full Atlas tree, because I don't think that you're going to just grind out every single map in the Fortress. I expect the much more likely situation is that you pick a path through the Fortress that gets you to the quest goals. You allocate, I don't know what it would be. Like, what do you reckon the percentage of the tree you'd probably allocate, Mark? And by the time you've leveled up and everything, it might be like a third of it or something, like maybe. Like something along those lines. You probably get like a third of it as you make your way to the, you know, maybe half. It sort of depends on like how long it's taking you to get up those map tiers and so on. But I'd say a third kind of.
Half was more what I was thinking for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, like sort of half to a third, the third half, something like that of the tree before we get to that. And so by the time you got to that point, you know, you're sort of ready to be able to go and do all the other objectives. And I sort of suspect that that'll be like most people's general experience. And that's not supposed to take too long. It's supposed to be, you know, like a relatively like achievable goal. And yes, it is effectively tutorializing the endgame as well, because then you've got the quest version of the pinnacle. You know, like you know, the which is hard. Don't get me wrong; it's not easy, but like definitely not. But it's like, you know, something that you would expect someone to be able to do if they're, you know, taking it somewhat reasonably. So yeah, like it is something that probably would expect to do. Now you can go and do the other quest lines if you want, but the one thing you will run into is that you're not allowed to do. I believe the lieutenants. Whatever this kind of like the pre-pinnacle is before you've got to map tier, it's 11, I believe, Mark. Is that correct? Like map tier 11 is what you have to do with that?
Generally 14.
14, yes, that's right. So you map to 14. So what that means is that if you do that as your first one, and you're a new player, so you don't know how to go through the tiers quickly, it's possible that you'd run into that bottleneck at some point if you just did one of the league trees first. And then have to sort of tear up before you went on. Whereas if you do the Fortress first, you're obviously going to be T16, or T15 probably, I suppose, if you're not doing the corrupted stuff. And so therefore you're going to have the maps that you need to be able to do those other ones like all the way to the end very quickly. So yeah, I'd expect most people to do Fortress first in most cases.
Part of the reason for that T14 thing, because I suspect it'll come up and people might be like, why is this gated behind a level? Like, why is it? Like, let me just do it. Is that we don't want the pinnacles. So obviously, there's a quest version and a non-quest version, right? The non-quest is harder. That's what you do afterwards. Drops better loot, right? That's the quest version, where it still drops loot. It's not just given nothing. it is still a fixed level, and we wanted all the pinnacles to be at the pinnacle, right, around tier 15, tier 16 difficulty, right? So you'll generally find they're about level 79, whereas the farm ones are like level 82. Now that doesn't mean a lot, but it's just, you know, obviously item level of drops, and then obviously, you know, whatever custom difficulty we want to do at those level thresholds. However, because often the pinnacles are not using traditional waystones, as in they don't have a tier on them, we have to gate the thing directly before them to be the difficulty that is the closest. Like, for example, let's say you got the tier 11 maps, you killed, say, Tulanesh, and then you got the Twisted Domain key, and so tier 11, and then you're jumping to level 79. Like, the difficulty jump is just going to be insane. And so it's like, well, you know, I'd rather gate that boss to be literally just one step before the Twisted Domain, so that if you do it, you earn the key, you're probably ready to do it. Like, you don't have to, like, now go and waste your key and go, okay, that was impossible, what the hell was that? So people will often probably run into this block, but it is important that when they kill those penultimate bosses, that they are probably ready then. That is their proving grounds to say, okay, you can try the pinnacle now. And if we have those be too early, yeah, people are just going to be like, okay, what the hell, this difficulty jump is out of control. And then they'll fail, they'll have to go do a bunch of stuff, it'll feel bad, or they might just be like, nice balance, you know, thumbs down. You know, it's... I think that the lesser evil is definitely to have
Nice balance, thumbs down.
ways to do this. But the other thing I didn't want to do is have it that let's say you did them in a different order. Like, let's say you let's say it was tier 11, as we said, the restriction on Tulanesh. If you then, and let's say Twisted Domain was T12 difficulty instead of the 14 and 15 that I have from that. If you did it breach first and did it naturally, it'd probably feel fine. Now, if you go and do the whole fortress, you get all the way to T15, you kill the Arbiter, you do that whole quest line, and then you go and do breach, well, now it's just tier 11 and tier 12, and you're going to be like, well, that was a joke. What the hell was that? And so that also doesn't feel good. And then the farm version's obviously high level, and so I think that's also bad as well. So it's just giving a bit of background as to why I want to make sure the penultimates are T14 and the ultimates are around, and the quest ultimates are 15, and then the farm ones are a few levels higher. And there are, I understand there's a few different things you could do here. You could be like, oh, as you complete each, the other ones level up, and as you know, there's all this kind of stuff, but I don't really love doing that. I think it's quite fun to just get to that boss. You get to literally the pre-capstone of the league, and it's like, all right, now get to tier 14, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, I'm going to go do that. When I come back, I'm going to come back and mess it up and hopefully get my loot, or, you know, whatever, or just fail, whatever the case is. But hopefully you get to kill it and get your loot. But yeah, I don't know. It worked out, but yeah, I understand. It's been a bit of a conversation in the office where people have wanted it one way over the other and been a bit back and forth about it, and had the levels based on the distance from the start and all kinds. And I just think that what we've landed on is certainly the best situation we have of all. But I suspect it's a question that's going to come up. So I thought clarifying it might be a little bit useful.
Oh, Lord.
Did you guys do any changes to the, like, earlier levels of the Waystones? Because I know in one video, there was a video I was watching where a guy was mapping out and saying, like, the earlier tiers of the Waystones are, like, higher levels now. Like, so they're like, how do you feel about the earlier level curve of the Waystones? Has that been fundamentally changed, though, or are you guys okay with the positioning of it currently?
As in level 65, then 6 and 7, then 8?
Yeah, exactly.
Currently the same.
There were some changes to monster effectiveness that happened.
I mean, again, we've done balance all over the place. So it's like, what do the numbers even mean is kind of a question in itself, you know, like... in general, I think a common problem people had is that the difficulty difference between the maps wasn't significant enough, and so it was like you just kind of just climb and climb and climb.
Right. Yeah.
We've done some changes around that. We went very extreme at the start of this development cycle, and we've now come back on it substantially. Not to say there isn't still a larger difference than what's currently on live. So yes, the difference between a T1 and 15 on live is less than the difference that will be in 050. As in it gets harder as you climb the progression. That being said, a lot of that was also done through, because we've changed what the map mods give as well. So they have, I can't remember what the exact bonuses are now, but for example, a subset of the mods do grant effectiveness. So, quantum life and XP. And then, what we tried to do is that every single mod on a map was something you actually were like, oh yeah, okay, this is rewarding, I want this. Whereas there were some that were a bit hit and miss before, for sure. So we've tried to do that, and so we've changed some of the outcomes given. But just now, by rolling mods on maps, you'll notice that things, because of the effectiveness, for example, that monsters can get harder, but at least then you can kind of control it, which is better than just, okay, we've moved the brick wall from here to here or whatever. It's like not a great change that we made, but yeah, I would say it's not too far off what it was at a baseline level. But again, that's where also then ideally, when we do have things like difficulty curves like that, it's something that's in the player's control, not like, otherwise again, like let's say Jonathan's build here, he's like, okay, I'm struggling in very early waystones, but and I raised the question to him, I was like, okay, but let's say we did this change here. Sounds good. You'll get to your tier 3 or 4, maybe 5 maps, but then you're going to hit a wall there as well, right? So it's about making sure that we do changes that aren't just like, okay, you're going to quit 30 minutes later instead. Or you'll quit the next day instead of the day before. Technically that's better, I guess, but it's still bad. So, but it's, I know that there's a lot of people who really wanted it to be that the difference in difficulty in tiers is quite significant. There's a bunch of people who don't necessarily. We tried it. It wasn't good. So having it more as you get more of the tree, more multi-choice, you get the Atlas Masters, and that being fully like agency controlled is definitely a better world than just like inherently every tier is significantly harder than the last, or some sort of more extreme jump like that. So anyway,
Well, let's
try it and test it.
Let's talk about the Atlas Masters then, because I'm very curious. There's 2 fundamental changes with the Atlas tree currently coming up in 0.5, one of which is you can basically max out the entirety of the tree. I know there's notables you can change, and that's kind of how you're doing the player agency on the Atlas tree, but also the Atlas Masters are the other, fundamentally new, and you call them, ascendancy classes for the Atlas tree, which is kind of an interesting way to put it. So what are the Masters enabling you to be able to do that was something you couldn't, be able to put on the tree? Why Atlas Masters, and what is that going to help you with?
So there's a couple of things going on here. So I think one of the things that's really important to talk about with that is that why the old tree was a concern. So effectively, the old tree wasn't allowed to have anything on it that could affect content that you could see that you were going to get in advance. And the reason for that is because you'd just respec before you do it, and then be having to respec all the time. And we wanted to get to a situation where you didn't feel like you needed to make those changes all the time. And yeah, the only way we had to do it before was to effectively water down the bonuses we could give. And then originally what we were saying is that we want to have it so that the customization that there is doesn't require so much cognitive overload in terms of doing it. And what I mean by that is okay, so the important thing to respec was various more sort of keystone-y type things. There's a bunch of other bonuses, but the stuff that kind of defines what is interesting about what you're doing is really more about those keystone things. So if we can bring all those key choices together in one place, it's going to feel a lot less threatening when you want to change them. And so now you've got effectively a nice little menu on the side of the thing of what one of these do you want to be playing under. And then after that, we were okay, we want to do some kind of thing where in PoE 1 you've got the 3 specs that you can do for your Atlas tree, and I've never kind of liked that because I don't know, how would I just describe why I don't sort of like that kind of stuff? It's it feels like it's adding even more complexity. So then I was okay, is there a way that we can get the idea of having 3 specs but not have it feel like something that feels like it adds complexity, but instead make it feel thematic and cool? And so then the idea of like, well, what if each spec was like a character, and they're like, like this is the stuff that they're doing, and then it feels like when you're changing between them that you've got it's just a more interesting and sort of more thematic way of achieving something like that, and I think that's actually
cool.
worked pretty well. And then funnily enough, it kind of ended up feeling a little bit like what we have in PoE 1. I can't remember what the name of it's called, but the way that you can select a thing when you run a map. I think anyway. So like it just has a sort of a cool feel to it like that. And because you're allowed to select between these things like that, then we can have bonuses that you would want to change between before you run a map, because you can effectively just have like, okay, this is when I'm running this content, this is the master that I'm using. When I'm running that content, this is the master that I'm using, and you kind of like decide those kind of choices up front, and then it's just like one click to change between them. So now then, we put all those bonuses of like, and even in this case, we're even experimenting with having bonuses that are going to apply to the league that we're actually running right now. So there are bonuses that apply to the Runes of Alder on there, and like we feel like it's okay to do that when it's like the sort of separate thing that's on the these masters, where we didn't feel like we were comfortable doing that on the Atlas tree before. So I don't know, like it's a different concept of delivery that allows us to do a certain thing, and in this case, the particular thing that it is like content that responds to like things that respond to things that you can see that are going to happen. So like I see that I'm going to run this type of map, it's going to have this type of content in it, I select this master, which is going to synergize with that.
Okay. The league mechanic trees, when I was watching the review, one bit of confusion, like I know I at least myself was confused about this, so I was hoping some clarity. Are you actually able to max out the entirety of each one of the league trees? Okay, so what was the decision behind we wanted to make it where you max out the trees and entirely also in the league mechanic portion of it?
So it's the same exact argument for the regular tree, right? Like it's we just think that it's important that for the types of bonuses that we can do, it means that we can do a bonus like, now when you kill this boss, it's going to have these additional these additional features or drops, something like that. There's like stuff like that you just wouldn't be able to do normally, because you'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to have that allocated when I'm doing this content because I instead have this other thing. If you allocate all of them, we could just do those types of bonuses, and I think it just makes them more interesting. But so then once again, you've got the Modi choice nodes that are there to control the like, do I want to have this league be like this or like that? The Modi choice nodes effectively serve as those decision points.
For example, there, by the way, like you can have a node that specifically enhances the difficulty or drops of the pinnacle boss for that league. You can have one that applies to the lieutenant. You can have, and so yes, before obviously you'd have to then go, I'm about to do the pinnacle boss, or you save up a bunch of keys and then you allocate those nodes and then run them all, and then you unallocate those nodes when you go back to farming. So even with that, but the different variety of bonuses we're allowed to have invested into, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty awesome where you can be like, okay, I mean, there is the sense of ordering as you're like filling in the tree where you're like, okay, am I going to invest in this now or this later? Obviously, you're generally not going to invest in the pinnacle boss when you're like, first starting out. Not that it's at the start of the tree anyway. And so, you're generally going to want to spec into that stuff later regardless. And often in those cases, it's even locked behind killing the pinnacle boss to start with, where it's like, okay, I can't allocate these until I kill the pinnacle for the first time. And then you can go and fill them in, and then when you do the farm, you can get the full loot. But it does create this just like really cool sense of progression of like, you're just like really evolving the loot, and there kind of isn't really a wrong choice. You're not like so scared about whether or not you're allocating A or B and whether or not it's going to be the right thing. And so you can just do it with a lot more freedom, a lot less like, fear of missing out of something. You can, but there's still a little bit of that like, thinking about the choice and the ordering and which way you're getting it, but it just feels so much less complicated and something you can just fuck up. Of course, that raised the concern, and Jonathan mentioned it, where you then lose your build per se. And this is something we've talked about a little bit, but like this is where the Atlas Master circles in. It's like, we need a system that is your build, but we need that to not be like 150 passives. It needs to be something quite clean like an Ascendancy class, hence kind of Atlas class. It's like, here's your end points you get on a quite small tree. And it's effectively like, okay, as you said, it's boiling down the actual key decisions of how things behave, like meta level decisions, as opposed to just like X% increased something. It's just like a little bit of thing. It's like very game changing, like enables a mechanic or disables another. Gives you, as I said, things that reduce the number of revives you have but increase the loot. And it's like, oh, do I want to risk that? It's like much more meaningful decisions all over the
That's
Atlas
dope.
Masters. And because we can have multiple,
In-game's gonna be so
because
good.
you can turn them off and enable them at will, and because it's not like just giant tree of overwhelmingness, it's quite easy to go, okay, I understand what this is going to do. I understand I can try it. I can just turn it off. I don't need to have like multiple respec systems in order to do it, be it gold or some orb. And then I can just go and change it. And then maybe when I'm ready later, I'll turn it on again. But the other thing it allows, and I like this, which is, of course, it allows us to make new ones in the future. If we have new characters and new Atlas Masters, maybe we sub one out, add another, you never know how these things go. Maybe we do a thing where we, move what's on Class A onto Class B and some of B onto C, and, you create different combinations of the classes and what they specialize in. Obviously still remaining thematic, because that's a thing that we want to stay bound to. And so there's a lot more like flexibility here in terms of changing, removing, adding, doing a bunch of like cool stuff with just like creating new builds where you can create an entire new in-game meta just by mixing up those classes. And you haven't had to change this entire 600-point Atlas passive tree kind of level grade thing where you're like, okay, we can create so many new metas with like five changes, and that's it. You just move this here, this here, this here, this here, this here, and it's like, oh, entire in-game meta changed. Now, that's if we want to do that. We don't have to, but that can be a cool level of shake-up that keeps in-game feeling way fresher and whatnot.
That's dope.
And we haven't had to add an entire new system to do it, so yeah.
Yeah, on the topic of in-game meta and stuff like that, and the player agency control of the not just the Atlas Masters, but also the multi-choice nodes we have on the Atlas tree itself, is something you brought up. I believe it was you, Mark, on the Q&A with Siggy D. Was that something that you don't have in PoE 2, but you do have in PoE 1, is the ability to respond to market changes by targeting different types of drops. So like this is kind of in the topic of combating inflation, which has been mentioned, as well as price stabilization, where you can make those choices to, hey, this is lacking a supply in the market or whatever, and then you can choose to say, well, I'm going to do that farm, and then maybe the market changes, and now the next mechanic is going to be the most lucrative, if you will. And
yes.
One of the questions is this one of your implementation to help combat your issues with rarity affecting currency and combating inflation in general? Or what's the take here?
It is 100% good at that. And, go for it, Jonathan.
Well, I was going to basically say exactly that, right? Like we are trying to make it so that not only do you have things with the Atlas Masters, but you've also got things with the like which league you're focusing on. Like Ritual now being a much bigger source of uniques, for example. Yeah, if like you think, like we do want the idea that if things are in the market are off in a certain way, you feel like you can profit. Going to doing a different league, being a thing that matters more is, I think, pretty important. So that was an explicit goal. Like let's try and make it so that we can get that. Now I don't know whether that's going to have a huge effect or not, but it was one of the things we noticed that was different about PoE 1 versus 2 when we were talking about this kind of stuff. So we thought like, hey, let's add that ability a little bit more.
But like to go further into that again with the response and player agency side, and I don't actually know if we made this. It was in one of my mini spreadsheets at some point. But like, let's just say Ritual gives uniques, which yes, we've made that change. And let's just say that there was a master who had somehow an occult, or let's say a multi-choice, and it just said all the uniques offered by Ritual are now currency. And you could, with a click of a button, go click, all right, now I run rituals and I'm just getting currency instead of uniques. Not to say that's necessarily a thing, I can't remember. But that's the level of thing where it's like, well, why not allow someone to change that? Now, one might be quantifiably better than the other, but that's somewhat market dependent and somewhat what you need for your gear, for your build, your character, and whatnot. But that is a level of a literal just click one button, click another button, like if that's a thing you want to do, that we will now be able to do with this, where you can completely transform what you're farming by just the click of a button. And you can do that for many of the different leagues where you're like, okay, well, I want to target this instead of that, or I want to specifically turn off A and B because C gives more currency, or I want to, I'm farming more bosses, so I want to make the bosses do this at the cost of something else. There's just all kinds of different things that you can do, and it's so much more approachable and simple.
That makes sense.
Which is awesome. So I do expect that to happen, by the way. I do expect people to be, those who care about it, to be dynamically responding their builds to the economy, which I know a lot of people care about, myself included, right? That's what you're going to do. So what you have as a day 1 build might not be your day 2 build, might not be your day 3 build, entirely just due to I want to make the most amount of wealth from an economical standpoint, as opposed to necessarily like what's best for your character, because I understand getting wealthy is often what's best for your character. So, you know, it will happen, almost certainly. And it's not going to take a whole bunch of gold and unshaping orbs and everything to do it, so that's good.
That's a good sign.
I know you guys put, I think it was in the patch notes, you guys said you put like Exceptionos and Fracturing Orbs around the Atlas tree now as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Correct.
One more example of it.
That can be seen as taking something away, which obviously it is to some degree. But what it's also allowing you to do is be exposed to the fact that it exists at all, which is kind of cool, because you can see the node, you can go, what the hell is that? And you can click the keyword and you're like, oh, I see what this is, that's cool.
The tree now
so
can
you're like, oh,
tutorial, which is quite cool. You know, like you now know those mechanics just because the tree tells you about them.
mm-hmm.
And think about that angle. Okay, one more question about the Atlas, and we'll move on and talk about the League mechanic. Destructive play is like kind of one of my favorite ways to farm in PoE1, right? And you were talking about the more focus on unique map bosses. It's not really a current strategy in 0.5. Like you're not really going and targeting down map bosses currently. Is this something you expect? I've seen you've been giving love to unique map bosses, farming strategy so far, the way from what we've seen on the Atlas tree. So are you guys trying to make that into a potential strategy?
Should ideally be one.
It should to some degree, for sure. I mean, it depends if you think of it as the map boss versus, say, I would say an example is the summoning circles, being able to invest in that and do stuff with that is a way of getting more boss fights. I understand it's not the map boss. There are definitely ways to... Well, I guess you got the Overseer's Tablet, of course, which is a way of trying to be more boss-centric. I get it's not quite the same as what you're mentioning, which is more just like fighting a bunch of ruckus at the same time. But as something that we're trying... There's a little bit of like, okay, and Jonathan said this to me literally today, which is that fighting multiple bosses at once is almost always worse than fighting one at a time. Like, you just lose that cohesion, you lose that combat feel. Now, you can have a twinned fight that is designed and they're a bit tag teamy and all that, but it often isn't good to just spawn a bunch of bosses on you all at the same time. Because it just implies, it's one of that same thing again, where now you just have to have the defenses to not insta-die because you can't tell what's happening. So adding more bosses is something that Summoning Circle mechanic tries to do, and there are other ways to do that, for sure. There's like a new type of Delirium Mirror that spawns a cloned boss from a map. So like we want to definitely spawn more bosses, but I don't want to just spawn like 6 bosses in a room all together and just let you deal with it, right? It just the combat just goes out the window.
Which we do have in the Rite of the Nameless, but in the Rite of the Nameless we do offset them from spawning. Like they don't all just suddenly spawn to start.
Yeah, it's still
they spawn. They're not like one at a time, but they do stagger so that like you've got time to potentially kill the boss first, and then before the next one. And so ideally, it's kind of like like it's a bit of it's a tough fight, but you're not it's not just like 5 bosses enter a room with you.
That being said, we have a bit of work to still do on getting ritual combat to be a bit better, right? Like it is one of the things. Like, I mean, obviously getting that many monsters in a bit of a claustrophobic situation can just be a bit of a mess, and so that's still something we are going to work on, is getting that combat to be a bit better as well, just as a thing to hopefully do between 050 and release. But yes, in that context, definitely staggering them is the play, because yes, what the hell is fighting 5 bosses in, not now just 5 bosses in the boss arena, you're talking about 5 bosses in this little circle with a bunch of rat tornadoes or something going around. You have no idea what's going on. So we'll try and make that as clean as possible.
Put in the work.
Oh Lord.
Savor the...
No. No.
5 calories with the Laughing Cow.
Oh my god.
All right, well, let's talk about the Ruins of Aldor then, this season's league mechanic. Now, one of the major, sticking out points is obviously Runic Ward. I don't think many people saw that one coming. That was a bit of a surprise when I saw that one. So what was the thought process of coming to the conclusion that, okay, we need another defensive of some sort, and this time we're going to put it under life. Like, that's pretty unique. So how'd you come to that point?
I think it maybe started. Did it start with the skills first or the ward first? I can't actually remember which way around it was, but I feel like it might have been the skills. And we were talking about like what resource could we consume. I mean, it came together in one conversation, but I'm trying to remember exactly like which way around it was. But the skills and the runic ward were definitely designed together. Like in terms of what that, like we sort of knew that we wanted something. So okay, for a while we've wanted to have. It's like you start with having it so that all of the skills are limited to weapon types, but then after that you then break the rule and actually have the stuff that goes between the weapon types. And so we knew for a while we wanted to have skills that can work across, so you can do some interesting stuff, and it like expands the universe and what builds are possible by quite a lot. So it was just a question of like what can the restriction be so that it's like to make it so that there's something there that we can have that still sort of limits it. Because we were talking about how if we're doing skills like this, we didn't believe that something like mana would actually necessarily work for the type of skills that we want to do, where it's like sort of unrestricted like that. So then we're like, okay, if we've got another resource and like we don't really want to do life, and then we talked about like do we make it like Vaal skills where you've got like the soul thing. We kind of didn't like that either. And I'm not sure exactly how we ended up with Runic Ward as the description, but I did like the fact that you've got something that's a hybrid defense and offense, and you can kind of scale that depending on what you do. So yeah, that it ended up pretty well, and I'm enjoying playing with it as well. Like I do now, especially that there's a proper sound when you run into it. Like you do know that it's saving you. So that's been pretty nice. So I'm a big fan of that. But ultimately, yeah, it came from the skills first, I believe, of like what you wanted to have a new resource that can power something like that.
You mentioned.
I honestly can't remember the conversation, but. Yeah, we started with like, well, PoE1 has Ward, and we're like talking about things that we could do that are of Kalgurin theming, and we ended up going. It was just like, we're not really satisfied with how it works. Like fundamentally, it's like very niche. It's very end game. It relies on all these unique mechanics to actually be good, and we need something that's fundamental to the campaign here, something that can help everyone. And then we went through all like, as we do, we just have our meetings of design rants, and we went through many iterations and somehow ended up with what we have. And I think it is a significant upgrade over what, if we had just copy pasted from what was in PoE1 there, it would have not been anywhere near as good. So it's quite satisfied with how that ended up. But it is always hard to forget these frantic conversations we're just like. It's honestly like sometimes it's 30 minutes and you have like 500 iterations, and sometimes it's several hours and you have like 3 iterations. But easier to remember those ones. This was one of those short and fast, snappy, ruckus conversations for sure that ended up quite satisfying.
I am hoping that people find use for Runic Ward skills and like whatever build that they're doing. Like I think that probably will be the case. Like we've made quite a few. There's quite a few ones that are general enough as well, and a surprising number of minion ones. So Ghazi will be happy to hear about that, I guess. But yeah, there's quite a bit going on there. The one I'm using on my current build is like honestly pretty fun. It looks simple. It's this thing where you called Repulsion, where you it actually, I think when we did the live stream it was a mark, but then we decided that we liked it as a curse better. So it's a curse that you apply to the monsters, and when they take a bit of damage, the curse gets removed and it does an explosion that pushes all the monsters away. And if you've got large monster density and you use it on a pack, like the monsters just get absolutely like when they just spread everywhere. Like it's honestly, it's quite fun. So I'm enjoying that one, and hopefully we don't need to nerf it because I'm enjoying it. But that's what I'm using at the moment. But yeah, there's quite a lot of interesting ones. And I suspect that what I'm hoping is that there might be some like ward only builds even at endgame, which I think will be interesting. Like we'll try and build one in the office, and maybe we'll even do a video on it. To see if we can do like a ward-only character, just to see how that goes. But the skills are primarily designed to be used as sort of like extra things that you can use on your other builds as well.
One question about the league mechanic itself is I was re-listening to the Ziggy D Q&A while I was prepping, and Mark, you said that you thought you could get up to 22 rare mob modifiers potentially when paired with the expedition when doing the Rune of Aldor, right? So one of my questions for you is this kind of intended to be a strategy, sort of like, I don't know, like the Alba Temple, for instance, where it's like, okay, you can farm it for specifically what the drops are, but also like it can be a juicing mechanism where we're building this. So another way to play it is you do this actually just to juice the rare mobs themselves, and you're actually farming the mobs for the drops with by adding more and more modifiers on.
That was the intention, yes, that both are a viable option. Now, the example I gave there is obviously the extreme.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have that happen every time, for sure. But I do want it to be a strategy, for sure, especially now that the mods don't display all vertically down the screen. Those specific mods don't. There's just like a little line of runes under the monster's life bars. And, yeah, but my hope is that there is a strategy at endgame. Obviously, it's a relatively high-end strategy, where once you are using logbooks and doing those grand expeditions, as we've called them. I don't know if there's an official name yet, but that's what I'll keep. The big old expeditions that you are thinking, okay, on some of the remnants, you're like, okay, I want this chase reward. And on others where you're like, nah, I don't really care too much about, this and that. Like, I think I can push the monsters to be more valuable than the things that are offered by them. That you're actually thinking, okay, I'm going to try and pick the highest variety of different runes possible so that you pass them along and try and get as many remnants as possible in the dynamite chain. And then you're just like, okay, obviously each one then passes them on. So you're going to get every monster. The first one will be like, okay, pretty standard reward. Second one a bit more. Third one a bit more. Fourth one a bit more. It's like, how long can this dynamite chain go? How many remnants can I get in it? And then you get to the point where you're just like, all right, like, what am I actually even fighting now? That's the hope, is that there are still people, and again, because you can control what the mobs
What
are,
am I even
what the
fighting
rewards are, where the bombs are, the order of them. You can control the difficulty and rewards entirely as you please. One other thing we've changed with expeditions, by the way, which I think has been a significant upgrade, though a semi-controversial internal one, but
I think it's way better. I think
feel
it's way
the
better.
same way, which is when you set a dynamite, you got your dynamite chain. When the first one goes off, you have to kill a certain number of the monsters before the dynamite will continue. So what would often happen is that a fast build, when doing the logbooks were before or expeditions, you could just kill as you're going. And what some people did is they'll just detonate the entire chain and then just like clear backwards almost. And what some people would do is just clear with it, but effectively now they're not even seeing the bombs. Like the bombs have all detonated off screen and they're just following the chain of minimap icons, clearing everything. Yeah. So now, like, it's like finish the encounter, next bomb goes off, finish the encounter, next bomb goes off, finish the encounter, next bomb. So you're actually following it, seeing the detonation, seeing what's emerging, doing the fight, and you're following along. It just feels so much smoother. Though I know that
I like it way more, by the way. Like, it's way better.
I agree. I think it's significantly better, but I know it immediately had people going, but I like to just detonate the whole thing and then just wait ages and then clear it all, going backwards or whatever. And I was like, wow, too bad. Because the pros outweigh the cons here, IMO.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just significantly better.
One couple other changes I noticed was 10 runes instead of 8 in the patch notes, right? I think the review said it was like 8 cap, and I think in the patch notes it said it was upwards of 10.
I think the reason for that is because there's that might have been me accidentally disclosing a hidden thing that's supposed to be a hidden thing, about how there's like a secret thing that you can get up to 10. I think I might have accidentally said that. Like, I think the normal limit is 8.
Okay.
But
there's like a bespoke 10 length and 9 length one. They're not like traditional. It's something that when you find, you're gonna be like, what the fuck is this kind of thing?
Yeah. So there's like, that was probably just my bad, just like looking at the table and like, here's the maximum one being 10. But there's probably a few things I accidentally disclosed in the patch notes that were intended to be hidden, but it's fine. We'll just we'll see.
How do you?
By all means, we don't mind.
How do you actually decide what you want to like leak or show in the review and what you don't? Like, I mean, that's got to be kind of a hard decision on, you want to keep enough hype going, right? Like you want people to know some stuff's coming, be excited. Like you got to tease Mageblood's coming, you can't tease what it is, right? So like, how do you decide what makes the cut on the teaser and what you want to be like discovered, like the hidden ascendancies, for instance, like you did with Abyssal-Lich?
I don't know really. It's sort of hard to decide, but like there are certain things. Well, okay, like a random example is like, not to, like in the patch notes we said there are 3 Berix rings. People are going to make some assumptions about what that might mean. Like there are things like that we're just like, this, like, in some ways, like it can be obvious to people what the hidden things are, but that can be its own form of excitement, because now you're going to be asking, well, how does that work? What do you do? And the way that does work is quite hidden. So, we'll have to see whether people do that. I know Jeff actually was saying to me, he's like, as a player, I would never find this. So hopefully people do actually end up discovering that. But all it takes is one, and then everyone will know. So, there are secrets like that around. But yeah, I don't know. It just like we want to make sure that there's just enough things where it feels like people have found something. And actually, there's that other whole system we didn't tell people about. Oh, I'm not even going to mention it. No, screw it. There's a whole bunch of like, I would say there's more like. I
don't even know what he's talking about.
No, you do know what I'm talking about. The one that's the most ridiculous.
You have to tell me afterwards, because obviously
the one that's the most ridiculous.
Why wait?
The one that's the most
there are
ridiculous.
surprises that we want to have. But anyway, the thing is, we actually got enough hidden surprises in this patch that I feel like it's kind of okay to disclose a lot of things, because there's quite a lot more of them. Like I feel like there's probably more hidden, random, weird stuff in this patch than we've probably ever done. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Mark, but it seems like it to me.
It should be. I'm a huge advocate for pushing for and I just declare it at the start. I'm like, this is a thing no one's allowed to know about, and then I just hope that no one says anything.
It's easy to make mistakes though. People don't know what stuff's going to be hidden, and so I might just randomly, blunder into things and like doing
there are other things where we're like, okay, but is it just going to get data mined in minute 0 anyway, and thus people. But then it's like, oh, maybe even that in itself is exciting, because people don't know if what's data mined is actually enabled or not. So you start adding bait, and you put in little things that are just like, to intentionally make people feel the sense of mystery. So even if it is a thing that will get data mined, it doesn't necessarily mean it's there. If it's like, I mean, there are things that are unintentional. Like I don't know if I don't know if the patch notes actually ended up with this, but all of the. For example, have we disclosed all of the hidden anoints? Like we expressed some. We're like, here's some that you get from the.
We didn't list them. We didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't list them. We
went over some in the live stream and the presentation, and we went over here's a few examples. But then there's there's a whole bunch undiscovered, and so it's like I wouldn't say that's a secret. It's just like we want people to discover stuff. We want some people, and then there's the stuff like the actual secrets where we're just like, nah, good luck finding this, and we look forward to day 29 where someone figures this out or something. I want some sense of discovery over the league that's more than just like what is your build and what is the meta, like stuff that's actually in-world discoverable things. And yeah, sometimes it gets figured out in like an hour, and you're like, oh well, whatever.
It's funny that you mentioned this with the bait thing, because I'm still looking at the data mine of Demon Magus and just waiting for something to happen. And oh yeah, you're laughing. I'm sitting here with you balls.
No, it was a real thing. It's not.
It was.
It is a
quick. Sorry.
It will be a real thing one day. It wasn't intended to.
Okay. I'm just trying not to go off on my notorious 15-minute minion rant here after Jonathan's comment earlier. I did have a curiosity about the league mechanic, which kind of weaves into the history of GGG. You guys have never shied away from trying out-of-the-box crazy things, roguelike things like Sekima Sanctum, Auto Battlers, Todia, DM's favorite TD Blight, and we saw a meteor crashing on the Infinite Atlas. Utilizing the Infinite Atlas for the immersion of a meteor crashing down, it looks really cool. This small little snippet looks fantastic. And then the question I have for this is the idea of changing /and/or terraforming the Atlas something that you'll want to explore further in future updates or even leagues moving forward?
I definitely think that we're going to do more of that for sure. I mean, Doryani does have, as one of the Atlas Masters, does have a light terraforming ability. He's got the ability to change one biome into another. Like as part of his Atlas Master abilities.
Okay.
All right.
It's not completely controllable. You can't just make the whole world a desert, but you know, like the he does have some light ability to do that, and so there's things like that that we can that we can do. But yeah, that actually matters quite a lot with the new Atlas tree, because the new Atlas tree has a bunch of things that are biome specific. Like this is a thing that happens in forest, and this is a thing that happens in deserts. So then, and there's also the ability to say like this biome behaves as this other biome in addition, stuff like that, like with multi-choice stuff. So there's like things like that going on that like make the biomes matter more, and then the ability for Diani to then be able to do some terraforming means that there's some sort of some strats there ideally that you could do with them. But yeah.
But I mean, yeah, like the imagination can immediately run wild. It's like, you know, it's less hypothetical. You know, this has not been discussed before, but it's like, okay, what does it look like for Blight using for, you know, whatever Blight ends up being in whatever world at some point in time? But like, okay, why not have actual blighted growths that appear on the Atlas and start growing and start like overrunning things? And why not have, I don't know, things invading from here, and you know, you can do anything, right? I mean, the imagination can run wild.
Breach domains appearing on the Atlas now. That's not like something that happens in front of you, but I mean, the fog bank thing and Delirium, the Delirious like area, that's kind of, this sort of feels a little bit like it as well, where like the Atlas gets transformed, you know, this event happens and that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, we're absolutely going to do, like, we want every league to have more mechanics that happen on the Atlas. Like, that is an explicit thing of like every league should at least have something that interacts with the Atlas in a more interesting way.
Because like my mind went completely off when I saw that. I was like, they're probably gonna do something like Catan League or Risk play, where we're like pushing out settlements. Now we're playing RTS on the Infinite Atlas. That's where my mind went, and I was like, I can't wait for that.
You could be vaping formaldehyde.
Yeah. Okay. Talking badger, deer, squirrel. Got it. Yep. That squirrel looked creepy.
Are you an elk? I don't know what I am.
Oh, she dead, bro. She didn't have a helmet, bro.
Well, I do have a discussion I need to have with Mark actually about some 1.0 league ideas. So we'll see how we go with that.
And you guys are adding so much, like, such scale of content here. Like, you're adding tons of crafting, for instance. You're just all of the different changes to the Atlas Masters, like you're talking about the terraforming of. How much of it is it when you're creating something, you're preemptively looking at it and being like, oh, this could be a problem, like this would make crafting too strong, and like how much of this is like emergent gameplay, which we're just going to put it out into the wild and like see what the players do with it, and then we'll do changes after? Like, what's the balance like?
Well, so we try to think of everything we can, but we also assume that there will be a million things we didn't think of. So it's kind of like, it's really both of those things. But yeah, we do try as hard as we can to try and understand the interactions. But yes, there's just a lot of inherent risk the moment that you add all sorts of stuff like this, that you just do get something that you didn't expect. So yeah, you just assume that that's also going to happen.
That's fair. When it comes to like the progression, PoE 1 has had, you know, years, a decade plus of content and lessons learned and the progression of new leagues and trying things out. PoE 2 has only had, or quote unquote only, it's pretty fresh out the gate, but we have had 2 considered full-blown league releases. And with the 0.3 Abyss and 0.4 Alpha, which we had recently, right? So I'm just curious, what kind of lessons have you guys learned from previous league releases, which has been helpful for the 0.5 one when it comes to PoE 2?
It's a tricky question because, like, I mean, we effectively learn these lessons every time. We've been doing it for so many years. The thing I guess we've been fighting. I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking. Actually, it's like, in a way, we've been fighting this content war against PoE 1, where it's like, okay, it's like PoE 1 has all the stuff. We need to get PoE 2 to some kind of standard, and so that's been like why we've needed to, in these recent leagues, to like, you know, make something that feels very, very substantial. And like 050 hopefully wins the war there now, and it's like we've reached the point where we've reached the point where we can say that we're an ARPG that has enough content, and that's why we're now able to say like, okay, before 1.0 we can focus more on like balance and all that sort of stuff, right? But it's like, I honestly feel sorry for other ARPGs in some way, where like they have to, like, they in order to even get to the point of being able to say you're competitive, you have to first win this like war versus PoE 1 of like the amount of shit that's in a game. So you know, like that's very hard. It's like it's weird that how we also had to fight that, but yeah, like. Look, I feel like we do know how to make a league at this point and all the things you need to have in it. Like, I mean, in fact, there's a very popular GDC talk that Chris made, which I still think is 100% correct in terms of the stuff that you need to have in a league to make it work. And ultimately, all of it with PoE 2, it's just we need to just take that stuff, you know, to even better, like get it to a polished level that is like higher than what we even needed to do before and that kind of thing. But like, I mean, we know how to do it. We've done so many leagues at this point.
Honestly, the newest discovery, I would say that is probably the hardest thing, is integrating it into the start of the game.
Yeah,
because the start of PoE 2, like one thing that we didn't want to do, and I'd say PoE 1 has failed at this numerous times, is like all of a sudden you start the game and then you're just in some subzone that's in some other dimension and you're like, what is happening? And it's like, okay, can you really say your game is like gothic horror if you're, you know, going into some person's memory or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you just where am I? Like, what's even going on? It's like it can get a bit techy, can get a bit sci-fi, can get a little bit like just out of there. So honestly, when we're thinking like, it's a big thing that comes up now. Where we were even thinking like, what the hell? Like, can we really just have a bunch of Vaal stuff in the forest at the start?
That one was interesting. That one was interesting because we weren't going to do like when we designed that league originally. Going into the past was the only thing. Like, we didn't have the past versus present temple, and the present day temple was a response to the fact that it felt immediately strange to walk out and be in Act 1, and then you're randomly traveling into the past in this Vaal thing. And so, like, we effectively had to make another version of like a bunch of those rooms in order to make that work and sort of still feel reasonable in Act 1. Yeah. And so that is something we never would have done. We never would have done that in PoE 1.
For sure, 100%, because you had that full pristine temple with all the living Vaal and everything, but like right now you encounter that at like second half of Act 3. It's a whole moment. If you just come out and you're fighting some basic zombies, a couple of crabs, and then you're just fighting like the full force of the like maximum power Vaal armies with the like, you just and then you go back and you're just in a forest fighting a wolf and you're like, what the hell's going on here? So,
That's fair.
It was a stupid amount of work because now we had to make undead versions of all the monsters. We had to make and that, you know, some of them needed, and as soon as a thing's undead, it can't use the same animation set. It has to look more death, like, you know, it's just a ton of work. And then all of a sudden, all the environment art, you have to have a destroyed version, a rundown version of every single room. It's like, and I'm like, why do we do this again? It's so Act 1 and 2 can, but it honestly makes so much of a difference than just like, you know, the world doesn't matter because I can just, you know, apparently
This is going to be something that in 1.0 is going to be a real challenge, right? Because we're expecting, obviously, a lot of people who haven't played the game before. It's really important that whatever we choose for the league to be, it has to be in every area, and yet it also has to be that it doesn't feel out of place. Honestly, like looking at it now, I'm like, the Runes of Alder actually does that pretty damn well, and it's almost a shame that we did that one here and not in 1.0, because that would have been a really good 1.0 league. But we have to effectively somehow pull that off again and make another league that feels like fine in Act 1 and but also fine in Endgame, that kind of thing. So
no, we have to do it 1,000 more times, right? So
I suppose so, but like it's especially important for 1.0 in my opinion, just because you've got so many new players. But yeah, it's always going to have to be something that we consider that we never really thought about in PoE 1 when we were designing leagues. There, it was just whatever. You know, like I guess the feeling always was that, like, you know, people have played this a bunch of times. Like, you know, like it's okay to just have like a weird eldritch nightmare on the beach. It's fine. Like just live with it. It's okay.
I mean, we have gotten better at it in PoE 1 as well over time, but it certainly had its moments where it was like, what the hell is going on at this beach right now? You know, in the swamp with the rowers, and all of a sudden I'm in some other place. It's just.
Ohio.
Oh my gosh, shut the fuck up.
Hoping.
Kind of funny. It's funny you mentioned Mewex. Actually, never thought of it that way, but you're like, it does kind of make sense. Like, if you're not really familiar with PoE at all, when you play the game for the first time, and you're just like, what the hell is going on here? Yeah. But speaking of league mechanics, talk a little bit about some of the ones that are reworked here. I got a few basic questions around that. So Breach. Talk about Breach for a moment here. The Genesis tree is coming. Big surprise. You know, they brought it back from PoE 1 goes to PoE 2, and it looks even bigger. in PoE 2, notably only jewelry, right? But like, what kind of changes and lessons did you have to learn from the PoE 1 to implement it in PoE 2, and what did you know you wanted in it and what you didn't want?
A big decision we made, and this is like a big, honestly, philosophical thing that could have future ramifications that we end up having to go back on, because it wasn't too long ago where we had, you know, tile loot versus ground loot versus all that kind of stuff, you know, being a thing in PoE 1, and I'm sure it will come up again another 100 times. But you obviously, you have this thing where, you know, should a league just give the same drops, aside from ignore the bosses and their unique drops, should a league's rewards just be the same as world drops? Should it be at its ceiling worse than world drops? Should it be, you know, there's all these different questions here. And the thing is that what we have decided here, and this is you know, an actual conscious decision we made, is that we wanted the rewards from leagues to be able to be better than world drops. And then thus comes to the important part that comes from it, which is it can't be better than everything. It has to be better than some sort of category for some sort of build. So it's not exclusively better. It's not like, oh, the thing that comes from here is 100% better than everything else. It's like for this build, for this build, for that build, you know, these types of characters or whatever are definitely going to want items from this kind of league. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to get. It's not like it's just trivial. It's not like it completely demeans the world drops. But we have made the decision here for sure that we wanted to say, and the Genesis tree was the big thing that we discussed when we were doing this, is like, well, do we want to be able to get things that can be better than what you can find in the world? And now, obviously, you still have to do the league in order to get the crafting material in order to create them. So you can't just fully bypass the itemization as is. But this is a decision we made. And as a result, yes, you get some pretty powerful stuff on the Genesis tree, and it's going to be pretty hard to get, but it is a thing you can do. But that is something you'll start seeing a little bit more from every league, where some are, for example, the Runes of Eldur, and let's say it goes core and all of that. I mean, probably for some builds, the socketables that come from it are going to be better than any you could probably find in world drops for certain gear or certain slots, right? There's avenues for each, and hence why the Genesis tree is focused primarily on jewelry. Like, it just straight up gives some of the best items, especially for casters and summoners in particular, that you'd be able to get compared to things that you could find in the world. And I understand some people are like, I don't want that, I just want the world drops to be better. And some people are like, no, that's the target farming. That's what I want to be able to get. That's what I want. I see that and I want to go for it. And there's a bit of a different crowd for both there, and sometimes it tilts too far, where it's like, well, what's the point in doing anything but breaches?
Sure.
Just do the breach and move to the next area, do the breach, move to the next area. So there is a balance there for sure, and it can pretty easily over time tilt one way or the other, so we'll see what happens here, I guess. But the important thing PoE 2 does that PoE 1 hasn't been doing as well at, but is still something that we have a similar philosophy on, is that it should be that at least it's not for like every slot. Like if the Genesis tree could get best armor, best helmet, best gloves, best boots, best weapons, best everything, well, what the hell why do anything else? At least now it's like, okay, I can possibly for some builds get the best amulet, probably for all builds actually get the best amulet, sort of. And then for some, get the best rings for summoners and casters, and for, you know, that kind of example, then at least you're wanting to go, okay, here's why I want to do breach. I'll get these items when I have them good, and then I'll do this other league for this other slot, and do this other league for this other slot, and that's the 3 leagues you're farming. And then once you've got those gear, maybe you change to some other leagues, all the meanwhile trying to get Mage Bloods from World Drop and do a Headhunters and all of that, and, you know, your classics. So yeah, that is a decision we've actually made here. That is, I suspect, something we've never really necessarily talked about, at least not for years, about whether or not we want rewards from leagues to ultimately be better than world drops or more exclusive, or, you know, things that are ultimately exclusive to it. So it's a decision. It's where we're at, and we're going to try it, and hopefully we'll see how it goes.
That brings up 2 interesting challenges for me. One is, how do you educate the players on knowing if there's the best of each of these? How do you overcome the challenge of making sure that the education portion of the players, so they know that you can get the best of each one of these leagues from each? And the other portion is then, how do you handle the situation of things like Alkengo, like the most standard, I'm going to run a map? Like if every other league mechanic has the best of something, does that mean Alkengo has like the worst of everything? Like how do you handle both of these challenges?
From the educational standpoint, well, that's kind of in each's league's responsibility. You'll learn that over time, generally speaking. But that's where the things like, okay, the Genesis tree, you can read the nodes, you can see the helper text, you can see what kind of stuff you can get out of it. You might not know exactly what mods and tiers and what values, but honestly, I prefer that to be within the discovery axis anyway. What it does say is your rings can now be X, and you're like, okay, well that like summon a bunch of
one way people might find that out now is because when they mouse over their item, there'll be a little build guide note there being like, you need to go to the Genesis tree and do this. So that can be one way that people will be finding that out.
Oh, there you go.
True, for sure. And so, okay, so what the other thing is let's say there's enough leagues and every league covers every slot. So like, let's say with there's 10 leagues and each league is best at one slot. Well, why do I need to do anything but you can't do all 10 leagues at once, which is good. But it is obviously still important that, for example, you still have to craft these items. You can't even if you could print the base type, you can't just infinitely now craft that item, right? So that's an important thing of needing to make sure that you're still acquiring all the core currency. You still have to do the content with the leagues in it to do it, obviously. But yeah, this is a risk. For sure, I can see a world where this is just okay, well, any ring or amulet that ever drops in the wild, sure, it can be okay, it can be good, but it can't be the best. That is the consequence of this. It is a 100% the actual consequence. And I do believe they can generally be good enough, and as long as that we're niche enough with what the leagues are doing, that it won't be too problematic. But shit, it's easy to cross that line, and now rest in peace, all rings on the floor. Just may as well filter them off and you'll never see them again. It is a fuck up that can occur. It is the actual risk, and as we add more and more content and it fills more and more of these voids, yes, you will reach that tipping point where now world drops suck. You will, almost certainly. It is something we will try to not have happen, but in leagues down the line, yep, probably will. And there's always a way to address it. It's often just one of those, then, okay, we've done this massive rebalance of this, retargeted this, and this, but it's obviously hard to know when we're not there yet. We don't have enough leagues covering enough slots to actually result in this problem yet. So still quite hypothetical, but I know, I can see how it will occur, a year to whatever after release. It will just be okay, whoops, we did it. And now there's, you filter out more and more items eventually. You run certain leagues. But at least there's the other benefit there, which is you can only run a certain number of leagues at a time. So at the very least, you'll be varying your gameplay. You're still going to be chasing for, and because your tree juice is everything, you're not I'm only, because that is another actual benefit, and it's something that suffers a little bit in PoE 1. So let's say on your core Atlas tree, you juice ultimatum. That doesn't do anything to the rest of the map, generally speaking. I'm talking at a general level here. And so if you're fully invested in that league, or in League A, B, and C, you'll generally zone in, do League A, B, and C, and then because the rest of the map isn't invested in at all, you could just say, I'm going to leave, right? Because the value of doing more of those as fast as possible, assuming infinite map items, which you have probably most of the time, you'll just go farm that thing over and over and over and over again. In PoE 2, because you can get full investment, that map is as valuable as it's going to be. And that league, every league is fully invested, and those leagues are as valuable as it's going to be. And so, aside from tablet modifiers specifically being one of the only access, and I guess technically choice on the Atlas Masters, but those are quite broad, or can be quite broad, you're generally going to want to kill everything, clear everything, and you're not going to have this thing where some stuff is hyper juiced and other things are just at base level worthlessness going on in the map.
Well, I don't know whether it was in the patch notes either, but it probably was. But do people know about the whole thing that we've done with tablets and the random content? I'm not sure if you, I don't know if you guys are aware about this, but that's on the same vein, by the way, which is that it was really important to us to make it so that you don't feel the need to juice everything. because like this is coming back to that idea about like like reducing the amount of time that it takes to kind of get to the point where you can do infinite farm. There was this thing we wanted to say is that once you've filled all your tablet slots, you actually don't get random things appearing anymore, and that means that you don't feel the need to juice everything. Like you can juice the several mechanics that you want to do, or like maybe it's just even one mechanic if you want to. You put all the tablets as being that thing, and then now no other random content doesn't appear, so you kind of don't have that. It's fighting against that same problem again, of like needing to, of like making it like so. Once again, you'd have the situation where if we had it so that to what Mark was saying, where a random breach could appear even though what you're doing is delirium, then it would mean that you've got content in the map you don't actually want to complete, and that's kind of the thing we're trying to avoid there. So you still can go the random route if you want by using like a radiator tablets and stuff like that, but if you want to, but if you're just focusing on a specific leagues, you just do it that way.
I had a quick follow-up to what you were saying, Mark, about you have to do the league mechanic to engage with the crafting part of that league mechanic. And as someone who very much enjoys being a hideout warrior, crafting items in Tier 1, just sitting in your hideout and doing my crafting, it sounds to me like the idea is to kind of like funnel the people into, for you to engage with this quote-unquote best in slot items for XYZ builds, you have to engage with league mechanic. You have to quote-unquote play the game. You can't just sit in your hideout. Is that an intentional design, or is that just a byproduct of the current design that you have right now?
I mean, you can still buy the items, so I mean, at the end of the day, you can still. But is it intentional? I'd say most of the time it is intentional. I'm just trying to think of all the examples.
Is Hiveblood the only one like that, though? Really?
Yeah. I mean, but here's the thing: like, you can either always shortcut you can either buy the thing to do the crafting, or you can buy the thing at the end, right? Like, generally speaking, some element of, because we try and keep almost everything tradable, but Hiveblood in particular, yes. But then, okay, you can't trade, excess tribute offered for wanting to do Rite of the Nameless spams. You can't trade. What else can't you? Obviously, you can't trade breach biomes. Right. So there's like different things of stuff that can be traded and can't be traded. But generally speaking, we've tried to make sure, all the rewards can be. We've tried to make sure that pinnacle keys can be traded and stuff like that. But yeah, there's going to be some leagues where you won't just be able to entirely sit in your hideout to do the crafting. You'll have to just buy the product if that's what you're wanting to do. Like if you don't want to breach, you're just going to have to buy the breach items. And if you do breach, well, then you get to sell it to those people, I guess. So win-win for everyone, ultimately, at the end of the day. Which is a cool thing, by the way, because it still comes down to that meta market shifting. And I actually think this isn't... I don't know how I ultimately feel about this when I actually will play it in an actual economy. But let's say minion meta. Let's say everyone's playing summoners. Let's say everyone's some sort of minion across the board. Let's just say... well, now am I going, well, I have to run breach. I have to, because the economy is such that it would be bad not to. And when I hear that, it's kind of like, well, now I'm not playing the content I want to be playing, but on the other hand, I'm getting rich, so like, and maybe I am playing the content I want to be playing. So there's a little bit of like, I don't know, but then like all of a sudden, let's say a new build gets discovered and everyone's like, oh, this build uses this item comes from this. Everyone quickly change leagues what they're doing, which you can just do. Like, that's a thing you can do, aside from, again, there's some tablet farming you'd have to do and whatnot. But it's quite interesting. And generally speaking, this isn't, even though no one necessarily puts a label on it, that probably is how it naturally works. Like, even in PoE 1, that's somewhat true to some degree, where there's certain things you want to get, but it's just probably on less of an extreme and less of a less intentional level for sure, whereas we're being a bit more intentional about it here. So I think it will have that impact, and I don't know, like, there's something I like to... I'm happy about that in theory, but I don't know if I'll be happy about that in practice. And so that's an interest, and again, I can't test that internally because there is no economy, right? So none of us can. I mean, the 5 of us trading to one another is, whatever, that doesn't matter, right? There's more than 5, but you get my point. And then the idea that if I feel like I have to play breach because of X, or I have to play delirium because of Y, or I have to play this or something, like because I'm someone who cares about trade and cares about the wealth of my account. That could be something that actually makes me feel a bit sad at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, I might want to just play the content I want to play for what the content offers, not for the economic value of it. And some people would just be like, play SSF, which, fair enough, I guess, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm curious to see, now that we're being more intentional about certain builds being more powerful due to certain items from certain leagues, whether or not that's going to then result in a feeling of having to play content you wouldn't want to necessarily play, but now you feel like you have to. So we'll see. Maybe people ultimately like that. Maybe people don't. I have no idea.
Speaking of really...
All right, I gotta use the restroom, get some water, chat. I'll be right back. Okay. All right.
Strong items and breach. The new Absent Amulet looks pretty good. Implicit is granting an aura. Can you have any aura on this, or is this a limited pool?
It should be every persistent buff skill that is on the uncut. Yes.
Every spirit reservation you can get for free on that amulet. if you roll it.
Okay.
There are 3 amulets. There's one for 30 reservation costs, one for 60, one for hundreds. It's obviously harder to get the hundreds. And thus the 60s over the 30s and whatnot. And yes, but again, there's a little bit of good luck as well. You probably have to do a lot of farming to get what you want here. But this is what I was saying about when I was saying it does arguably offer the best item. It's just the ease of the rare equivalent of the mage blood of amulets, is it is there, and I want that to be something you can get.
So wait, what item are they talking about?
Now,
Hold on.
There are 3 amulets.
Hold on.
The new Absent Amulet looks pretty good. Implicit is granting an aura. Can you have
trade and cares about the wealth of my account? Feel a bit sad content I play. I'm curious to see now that leagues whether or not that's a play, but now you feel like you have to. I have no idea.
Speaking of really strong items and breach, the new Absent Amulet looks pretty
So
good.
it's in breach. Okay.
Implicit is granting an aura. Can you have any aura on this, or is this a limited pool?
It should be every persistent buff skill that is on the uncut. Yes.
Every spirit reservation you can get for free on that amulet. if you roll it.
There are 3 amulets. There's one for 30 reservation costs, one for 60, one for hundreds. It's obviously harder to get the hundreds. And thus the 60s over the 30s and whatnot. And yes, but again, there's a little bit of good luck as well. You probably have to do a lot of farming to get what you want here. But this is what I was saying about when I was saying it does arguably offer the best item. It's just the ease of the rare equivalent of the Mage Blood of amulets, you know, is like it is there, and I want that to be something you can get. Now, does that mean world drop amulets are less valuable? Well, yeah, it will. It 100% will indeed result in that. And the same way that the existence of a Headhunter and a Mage Blood demean the value of rare belts in general. Well, rare belts are in a bit of a sad state. Hopefully a less sad state anyway. But rare belts are demeaned by the existence of very broad, very chase items. And so there's this interesting, well, do you want the chase items or not? And you know, there's a bit of philosophy around that, and people tilt one side or the other. And so we're just effectively saying, yeah, here's this freaking OP thing. It should be hard to get, shouldn't be easy to craft, and it should be something you want to chase. And there's a very clear path to it, not necessarily an easy path.
Hopefully, that Delirium amulet is competitive with it on some level.
Yeah, which also very hard to get the right one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't reinstill those at all, right? Like the Delirium amulet, you get the 2 instills and you can't reinstall one of them or something, right? Like you get the 2 and you're locked.
I believe it unintentionally allowed you to replace one, but I did say it shouldn't. Like, it should just be you want to get as many as possible. And when you get the right one with the right 2 notables, you're just like, holy fucking thank God, I think I buy 6 or whatever. Like, you know, it's just, you want that really, really, like, again, these are super rare but super chase, right? And
Sure.
you'll get one that has 2 okay instills and you'll still be happy, but like when you get the 2 that are the 2 you actually want, I want you to really be stoked. So the point where every single time you find this, you're like, holy shit, this could be it. This is this is the, you know, the 5 mirror drop here.
The 5 mirror drop, goddamn.
On the topic of Delirium and jewelries, for that matter, in Delirium we're now getting some additional crafting options when it comes to jewels. Not jewelries, but jewels. And I mean, they're already let's call it a fairly strong place is where we'll put jewels, at least from most of our perspectives. How do you guys feel about the balance of standard rare jewels versus something like adorned, as well as time lost jewels in the current state of the game, or 0.5 rather?
Well, the crafting for jewels was mostly that, like, the rationale behind adding that was ultimately, okay, like when you finish like a full sanctum, you end up with just like 45 jewels in your inventory if you take all the jewel chests, and you're like, okay, like 4 of them are okay, I guess. And it's just extreme item saturation just to get the good ones. And it's like, well, we're missing crafting here, really, right? We need something here to help guide it to be that they're okay, especially given that the jewel sockets are on kind of core pathways. You get them and then you're like, I don't even have anything to put in this for like a while. So at least now, and obviously you get some of these in the Act 4 in the campaign, you'll be able to, craft something that at least has 1 or maybe 2 useful stats for your character. If it had 1 by default, you add 1 that's decent. So that's just a win for like your more broad player base of just interacting with base jewels as a base level. In terms of the actual jewel balance, well, yeah, you'd kind of just end up with get all the jewel slots. Like there's so many really good end game unique jewels, as well as just like what you can do with the top end power of jewels, that like you end up with that thing with a lot of passive trees, just like I need to get every jewel slot, and then you end up with these kind of really shitty looking builds, honestly, where they're just not even taking anything, and it's like, what's the cheapest stuff I can take along the way, but otherwise it's just jewel slot. There's definitely some problems here. How do I feel about it? I mean, I kind of, in one end, I'm like, well, it's like a very it can be a very satisfying, advanced, and honestly complex crafting system that a lot of people probably like to overall engage with, where their more traditional build ends up looking like this crazy jewel fest. On the other hand, it's got the problem where, every character kind of devolves into looking like a very similar thing. I'm trying to think whether or not I ultimately enjoy it or not as a player. probably less so. Like, I probably think it's ultimately not a good spot. Like, I would say if I had to not, I would, I don't like the idea that ultimately 95% of the passives on the tree don't matter at all, even though some of them don't matter anyway. Something we need to fix, but I don't like that it just ends up being that. But I do like I want to chase all the really unique jewels. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of like a bit, hit and miss on it ultimately. I don't know. I'm curious what a lot more people think about this kind of level of meta and itemization. Because I see a lot of stuff that's quite, I hate jewels, or keep these unique jewels but not the rest, and then obviously timeless jewels are a whole different level of complexity. But yeah, I mean, ultimately going back to the original point here is we wanted to create a thing that's just improves the experience for the average player who's just engaging with a few jewel sockets, more than thinking about what it does for the end game. The end of the end game, I should say, kind of situation with character builds and itemization. So, because it buffs that as well. It's obviously just an upgrade for them regardless. Which is maybe not a good thing, but I think it's one of those things where that's a thing of do you think about every consequence? And it's like, well, kind of, but this is a good enough improvement for, regular players such that, it was worth doing, and we weren't caught up too much on the consequences of what it means for later. But I would expect more changes later, much later, of course, like some point later, to around this kind of dual meta. But I am also very curious to see what everyone actually thinks about this. Like, do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you, do you like? I guess the bigger question is, do you like that a lot of characters just end up wanting as many jewel slots as possible, and wanting to just have jewels everywhere? Because once you can craft, it's effectively a way of saying your passive tree goes from what we've said it is to what you want it to be, based on the fact that you can craft and put in there exactly what you want. And that sounds like a good pitch in isolation, but then when you play it, you kind of have this problem of I can't play my build until I've earned some large amount of money and done all this, which again could be good as well, where it's the builds at the start of the league, the builds in the middle of the league, and the builds at the end of the league aren't the same thing, because we had to because enough jewels had to be found and or created in order to create that many characters. So I don't know. There's wins and losses to this, and I'm on the fence, honestly.
Okay. Well, we can move on to the miscellaneous portion here. We're at over just about 2 hours. I know we're trying to keep it shorter, so we'll do the miscellaneous portion. We got a few questions here, and we have just a handful of patch notes related questions, and then we can kind of wrap up. So, to start for the miscellaneous portion, what's going on with Toda? Where's Toda currently at?
Well, we don't have it. But yeah, I was really hoping that we would be able to get that the Final Ascendancy trial when we did Act 4. We couldn't quite make it. We didn't have the time. We obviously couldn't fit it into this cycle in 050. So the question is whether or not, I suppose, whether it comes in 1.0. I think that's looking unlikely, to be honest. I don't think it's as important as some other things. But we'll see what we can do. It's kind of come down to whether or not we can somehow make what that does sort of merge with something else, I suspect. There's quite a lot of work.
What we've been trying to do is, talking about the merging, is similar to how Runes of Elder.
Quick AFK or a quick chat. Gotta use the restroom. Okay, we're back.
Is a kind of expedition Kalguran thing. Yeah, to be whether or not it's kind of are we able to create a kind of Karui League that links into Tota somehow, and thus we get to double dip on the content.
Exactly. So if we're able to make a Karui themed league, then that will mean that we can effectively share some of the monster workload and like boss workload across both, which would then make it more viable to do alongside some of that other content. And yeah, with Runes of Elder, we got to effectively do an expedition upgrade at the same time as what we were doing as doing a league, and so that kind of like really helped with that. Like, and part of the reason we did that for this one is because we had so much other stuff going on with the other leagues as well that we figured making the core league be be integrated somewhat with one of the leagues we're upgrading would help quite a lot. But yeah, maybe we might be able to squeeze Tota in if we were able to do a similar, if we were able to do a similar move like that. But otherwise it'll probably have to, if we can't do that, then it would have to wait for like a 1.1 or 1.2 kind of situation. Yeah.
It's quite interesting when we look at Tota, because when we made it for PoE 1, we were obviously still developing PoE 2, and we were like, oh, this will be cool to kind of be able to then use there later, and like, you know. And then now the quality bar has risen so much that when we then look at Tota in the context of PoE 2, like we thought all of the animations, the models, the art, the combat, everything would be able to just like, we can just copy paste it, it'll be fine. And now when you go look at all those monsters and like just how long it's been and how much we've stepped up our game with stuff, it's like, these don't hold up at all. Like we have to, and so we had intended for it to be a way easier thing to just, you know, transplant from one to the other and like do some, you know, some polish, some touch ups. So now it's like, okay, we have to like effectively reanimate all of these. We have to, and so it's a ton, you know, you've got the multiple monsters of each tribe. You have the 10 chieftains, and let alone all the story moments and advancements we've done there. It's like, this is a shit ton of work, where it's like, you know, I mean, it's the monster work of, it's probably like 75% of an act levels of equivalency of actual monster work. Like, it's quite a lot. Obviously, an act, a lot of it is the unification of the environment, the monsters, the narrative, etc. Whereas, like, obviously, the part that is easier for Tota is it ultimately takes place in one arena with one back room, and thus it's faster to ultimately make. But in terms of just raw animation work, raw effects work for all the different skills, all the like scripting on the game design side, it is a ton of work. And so it's just been, again, when we were like, okay, is Tota being missing or the end game not having goals? Well, obviously the end game. And so when we're just coming up with this stuff, we're just going, what is the most important thing we need to do now? And Tota has not been it, given like it would be different if it didn't require a ton of work. We could probably chuck it in alongside one of these things, but it just somehow is not held up at all. And yeah, so if it weren't for just straight up being too much work, it would be there already. Like, it just is an insane amount of actual work to do that is going to cost some pretty important stuff.
I appreciate the answer.
That makes sense.
Tota is just a personal favorite of mine because that was the league I joined, PoE, actually. It's my first league ever with Tota. Just curious. Go on, Gazi.
Well, I'm just going to move on since we're kind of over the time already. I do apologize for that. Appreciate you guys sticking around. The next question I have is kind of a twofold question. I'm going to start with the first half of it, which is more about the design philosophy of unique items in PoE 2. PoE 1 has their version, and PoE 2 seems to be more build-defining options in terms of the unique items. So just a little short tidbit on what's the philosophy differences here? What's the focus?
Well, this changed a lot in recent time, by relatively recent, I mean the last couple of years. Because we had a bunch of uniques. We honestly believed at the start that we would be able to just take a bunch of PoE 1 uniques, modify them slightly, and put them in PoE 2, and that just completely 100% is not a thing we can do. Like, it's interesting because the combat systems in PoE 2, working the way they are, had a way larger influence on what's an acceptable unique than what we kind of expected, and it's honestly surprising because like you'd still think, oh yeah, why can we not, like, how is it not that there's just like 50 PoE 1 uniques we could just literally take and just put in PoE 2 if we wanted to? And then you go through each one and you're like, okay, well this one can't be for that reason, this one can't be for that reason, like the dominant stat would just totally have to change. Like it's weird how it sort of ended up that way. And so even also when we did add a pile of uniques in I can't remember what patch it was like after 0.1. There was like a patch where we added a bunch of uniques, and those uniques, which were kind of like more on the PoE 1 design scale, have not really held up either. And honestly, we're gonna have to go back and probably like remove and or change a bunch of those as well. Like, and this is like the sort of issue that we have in the kind of the sort of mid-game, mid-campaign kind of like, you know, like those uniques. They're just like really not holding up. And yeah, it's just funny how we just no longer have the ability. Like you kind of it feels like we've kind of got to have a skill or something on a PoE 2 unique in order to make it sort of somewhat worthwhile. So yeah, like I don't know I could even necessarily say exactly what it is particularly that's caused it to be that way. But for whatever reason, like when I look at a, you know, like a PO1 style designed unique at this point, it just does not rise to the level that we feel like you'd actually use it. And so yeah, I do wonder if one reason can be that I sort of suspect it's got something to do with the fact that in PoE 1 build you tend to just optimize one skill and that's all you're doing. And so then, like in PoE 2 context, we've got to care about more about that, like the larger build. Like there's a lot more going on with with a PoE 2 build. At least that's the intention. So I sort of have this feeling it's got something to do with that, but I don't know if I can necessarily pinpoint exactly why it is that we do feel like, yeah, a unique has to be just a significant amount more going on.
I mean, that's fair. The follow. Sorry, go ahead.
I do got a thing there because like what we're making now, like a lot of what we've been showing with 050, like a lot of the stuff you've seen recently, this is kind of this age of uniques is probably it's not something we've done before really. Like all the uniques we're making are definitely the most expensive in terms of development costs that we've ever made. And as a result, they are more build defining. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you do have then the uniques that they kind of have their single special stat. It's kind of like 4 stats, one of them's a bit special, and it probably just has some sort of end game when combined with 6 other variables as a thing. And the problem with those is that they don't hit for like most people when they get them, they're like, what the hell, why would I want that? And they just end up being these really like hyper niche end game things. So that was a type of philosophy we had where they were effectively meant to be the puzzle piece, right? And you need multiple puzzle pieces in order to do the thing. Those uniques are generally failing when you find them. Like generally speaking, Jonathan did this exercise with me yesterday. We opened up that same character when we were looking at something. He showed me every unique. We went through all of them, and he just goes like, and he was like, "Why would I want this? Why would I need this?" And I was explaining the like end game build used with them, and he's like, "Well, how the hell? Like, okay." But then it drops at level 23, you know? It's like, and so there is a problem with that. And so our new philosophy has just been like, let's try and make these way more, for full of fantasy. Because that's my biggest thing, is just, I want you to feel like, you know, and that you saw that with the grenade launcher thing, where it's just like, I just want you to just be a freaking grenade man. Like, come on. Right? And then like the Facebreaker thing, obviously recently is pretty cool. You had the like, the Raven and more summoner, like Delirium things. It's like, what if you were like Tang Mizzou himself? Like you had his powers. Like that's a cool fantasy where you can like create mirrors and illusory things and like bend reality, and like that's a cool fantasy to me. You know, so some can be more narratively driven, some can just be like fire grenades everywhere. And that stuff is resulting in way cooler things. Like way cooler. Also way more expensive to make. And so what I want to get better at yet, I think something we haven't nailed. So I think we've now got the puzzle piece side, we understand what that looks like. We understand what the other end, which is the more expensive fantasy fulfilling build defining thing looks like. What we don't have is the middle ground where there's that kind of not as expensive to develop, but pretty impactful, just not like ultra impactful ground that we still need to do as well. And I think once we've figured that out and we've got our understanding of all three, now you are going to see
W devs, man, they're so
you're probably not going to see as much
awesome.
Original
I don't know, they're awesome. I love these devs.
Raise the bar on all of those, or a lot of those at this point.
Yeah, they are getting upgrades to some extent due to the Kalguran like unique upgrading thing, so that has helped. But there's still some of them that are a bit unsalvageable that we just need to do something with.
And by the way, there are unsalvageable uniques in PoE 1 as well, right? It's just that there are 1,500 of them or some number, you know, and so they kind of get lost in the weeds, as opposed to right now, the I would say, you know, there's a mid ground of them where they honestly you get it and you're like, I don't know why, I don't need it, you know. So there's, to me, so I think what we've now made is like a lot of what we've made is so epic. I really love them, and like, you know, even talking about them and doing the videos, and there's so many more that haven't been talked about or found yet, which is awesome. That just keep going, and some secrets, the barracks and all of that coming in. So once we get now that we've got that rhythm and we're working that, we're just going to get more and more efficient with it. But I honestly think, and this is a thing that I've said to Jonathan as well, where I'm like, I think maybe our number one problem in the game, like after 050 comes out, now that if Endgame's in a good spot, now that we've sorted that and we have a good progression, we've got goals, my personal number one fault with what we haven't got doing well, especially because of our reputation, is that I think that our thing that we need to step up and do the better at, that we currently have done very poorly, is our unique items. Like, I straight up think that we were meant to be we're epic in terms of ARPGs. Like, we're real good at items and itemization and uniques and crafting systems. And I do believe that we generally are, and I don't think PoE 2 is an accurate reflection of what our capability should
Okay,
be.
Mark. Okay, Mark.
Now that we're delivering real cool shit, I just want to go and just fix up all of them. And so that's another one of these 050 and between 1.0, I want to be nah, we have to save the uniques. That's a goal I have. Now, obviously, different people have different levels of understanding of what's important to the game or the most important to the game, but I would be shocked if that's not on most people's top 3, top 5 list of things that are the most wrong with the game currently.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's a
that's
lot
fair.
of really good. There's a lot of really bad, and we can't have that. And I think the biggest thing, to give a more specific example, my big rant, a lot of our uniques are level 1 to 30, right? Level 1 to 30-ish, and a lot of them are the puzzle piece. Some are good, some are not good, some are whatever, hit and miss. And we've got this now endgame band that we've added, and we've added a bunch to the new pinnacles. We've got a bunch of things you can farm for the different leagues. What we don't have now, and I think this is a huge problem, is between level 30 and 60, there's kind of just nothing. There's kind of, honestly, it's barely any start to drop. And I don't mean the level requirement, I mean when it can.
And the annoying thing about that as well is that often, when you're in that band, the things you're getting are the ones that are level 1 to 30.
Yeah.
And so then what you end up feeling is you get these and they just feel like they suck, because if you'd put them on at level 20, they would have been fine. But you're putting them on at level 40 and it's kind of well, this is just garbage.
Because of how our uniques work, our unique drops work, where it's first I'm going to decide if I'm dropping a unique, then I'll figure out what the unique is. It's I'm going to drop a unique. And then it's okay, let me go and find one, and it just so happens that every unique lower than that level is between 1 and 30. It means pretty much any unique drop between level 40 and 60 is just going to be bad. A niche cases aside, some jewelry in some cases, but that is a big problem where pretty much every unique you find in the current mid game, and thus ones leading into endgame, you have very few ones that allow you get you set up for endgame. There are some, again, there is a few, but it's nowhere near good enough. Nowhere near. Not
Hell
even,
yeah. Age of the Uniques.
We're 20% of the way to good enough there. So, I don't often talk about what I consider to be, because generally when we're obviously talking about, what's new, what's happening, but we don't really get to talk about what's just fundamentally wrong. And I'm trying to be a little bit more transparent about some of that stuff, because that is the stuff we're aiming to fix and address and really try and salvage and save and get perfect between 050 and 1.0.
So yeah, we're hoping to fix that in one of the kind of economy resets that we'll do between 050 and 1.0. Is just add a shit ton of mid-game uniques.
On the topic of fixing things, my follow-up questions that I really was curious about this. I do first want to say that I'm a big fan of the Kalguran upping your uniques. This is the first time since PoE, 10, 12 years ago, I think, since I'm actually considering using Shober Jabber on a build. So, I mean, that's just because of the Kalguran upping. So that's funny. But my question is, regarding these build-defining uniques that you're adding, they're supposed to be interesting and impactful, giving you a skill, and people make builds around them, like the Grenade Man, for instance, a prime example. A problem that I've seen being discussed a lot in the community has been that your main skill is supposed to have maximum sockets. It's the quote-unquote 6 sockets, but it's actually only 5 sockets, right, in PoE 2, with maximum sockets. And that is gated behind a level 20 version of the skill, which means it's going to cost more if the item is popular in the market. It's going to be rarer to find. It has a higher level requirement to drop, and all those aspects. But there's already a power scaling difference between having a lower level skill of the skill itself and having a level 20 version in terms of what the benefits are. But the socket difference is so massive. So I was just curious if this is something you haven't thought of, or if it is a design you're happy with moving forward, that the max sockets is only on the level 20 versions.
We've discussed this many times, just FYI, like it's come up, sorry, came up a lot, but I think for 050, and I'm hoping this gets done in time, and if not, be shortly after, I was adding, like, as a kind of, like, in an ideal world, you'd just be able to either, well, at least you'd be able to just, like, okay, why not just allow using a perfect jeweler's orb on it, for example, and then just...
I was literally about to say that. Why can you not just jeweler's units?
But for now, you can't currently, but that will be the goal. But for now...
Is there a reason we can't allow that?
I think just time constraints, but I mean, feel free to look into it yourself, but...
I mean, like, is it really that hard to implement that?
I don't know.
I have no idea how it works in terms of the way the storage is. But there should be a way.
Exactly. I have absolutely no idea, so we can find that out. But
we might be able to just do that, honestly. Like, it might just be possible.
Being that, if that doesn't work, because that is the ideal solution, at the very least, I was going to get a temporary, just like recipe thing added where you can get a level 19 item, a level 20 uncut skill, and a perfect jeweler's orb, and then level 20 and 6-link the item as a thing that we want to enable. That is
just doing the perfect jeweler thing. I feel like that would be. Surely we can make that happen. I don't know.
Well, follow up on that if you want. I have either way multiple solutions. We will hopefully get one of them in time.
Now at KFC, get a $10 bucket of...
I've never 6-linked my gems actually, or my skill gems. Oh my god.
All right, well, one last question, and then we're going to cut out the patch notes related and some of the other ones here since we're kind of at the edge of the time. If you want, we can do just a couple rapid fires from chat, and then we can call it there. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay. So I want to follow up on something that Ziggy D asked, very selfishly of me, admittedly. I'm playing the Spear Walker. I think it's the funnest looking thing, like, in the entire review that I saw. And it was about Tame Beast. And he mentioned that Tame Beast is like a level 9 cut gem. However, you can ascend and take the node that lets you capture beasts way before you can actually get to the cut gem. And you mentioned you might have a solution to this because it's a little bit of a noob trap, right? You take a node that you literally can't even use for like 10 levels or something. So I was wondering, when I saw the patch notes, it still said the gem starts at level 9. So I'm curious, do we have a solution for this coming to 0.5?
I thought we were going to just change it. I thought we were going to change it so that the uncut gem was lower level. I thought we were going to make it so that Tame Beast was just a lower level skill, but that's what the last I heard about it.
Certainly, the last discussion I had was that we were going to move it down to a lower level skill tier. So it could be the patch note was wrong. It could be something caused that to not happen. But that was definitely both Jonathan and I's understanding of the last of that conversation. So, but yes, we don't want that to be a problem. We will do something about it.
James just messaged me that Tame Beast is level 7 now. Patch notes missed it for some reason.
Perfect.
So he just messaged me that. Talking. So that is the answer to that. So all good.
Well, unless Ghazi got a last question for him before we start the rapid fire and wrap it up here.
I was just wanted to have some sort of curiosity into your minds with basically the progression of what's going to happen between 0.5 and 1.0. You don't have to go too deep into it, but I'm curious because you, Mark, mentioned something that I keep referencing, and that is the plugging the holes. And I love that. I don't know why I love that comment. Plugging the holes and getting balance fixes and changes between 0.5 and 1.0. So my question, just to keep it short, is what are the things you want to prioritize in the updates between now and end of the year during this time frame?
So unique items, as Mark said, very big one. A lot of skill balance, a lot of just like character balance. Adding some skills to existing classes where necessary, and/or changing functionality of how they work for just like where we're going back and just making sure that everything that we already released in the in 010 is like in a better place, like just like all of that sort of stuff. Like that's big. Passive tree reworks, just like improvements there, is like another big one. And I mean, I guess that's probably the main stuff, really. Like, yeah, I think, and then
it's a lot of the other chaos damage, getting that to be better, and thus acolyte,
Right.
ignite builds, burn, damage over time in general.
Right.
You know, just all these things that we've been, and honestly, it's come up in a few expansions, and it's just like, well, we just haven't got there yet, you know. And as I said, the passive tree, the base types, the you know, bloody hope the general. I mean, more replayability improvements certainly would also be good if there's any new one. Like, I've been really nice after people play through this and get a feel for it. It's obviously identify the new evils. You know, what's bad, what's annoying. Like, now that people are going to be replaying through Act 4 for the third time, you know,
that's 100% a thing, right? So, like, is that like Act 4 didn't get a huge amount of changes in this patch, and I suspect part of the reason for that is because we haven't had the time. Like, there hasn't been a like resurgence of people saying I hate things in Act 4 because people haven't necessarily replayed it that much. So, like, I'm sure there'll be things in Act 4 that after this patch, people will be like, oh, this is the horrible thing in Act 4 that I don't like. So we'll see. We'll just have to see what that is at that point.
I'm not sure if they'll come sooner or later, but I'd like to do sooner. I'd like to, when we have our like next economy reset between, that we have either the third ranger or the third druid ascendancies come in. Like, it'd be nice for all existing classes to have all ascendancies before the full release. What else? You know, it's just the things, because they're just missing, right? It's just clearly like, okay, they're just missing the class. So as much of that as possible would be really, really ideal.
Dope.
And yeah, I don't say
Can I
much
cut
else.
you
I'm
off
sure
there? Just wanted to verify.
What was
You
that?
said that economy resets. Just to verify that I heard you right. There will be economy resets leagues.
There will be
between
economy
1.5
resets. So
and
there will effectively,
Okay.
like, there will be leagues. It's just that they're not going to be like, they're not going to be the same as what a like a proper, you know, like it's not going to be an 06
Yeah, yeah.
what an 060 would be. And the reason why we say that is because we don't want to set the wrong expectation, and like it's not going to be like the giant mega content release in that way. Now there will be content, right? Because we're talking about adding uniques and skills and all that stuff, but it's not going to be quite the same. I think, like, I wouldn't expect necessarily to be like you know, like the on the other hand, we're generally pretty good at taking little and turning it into a lot. So I guess we'll see what we end up with there.
Well,
But I mean, the thing we've referenced before is like Legacy of Phyrexia type of stuff, right? Where you just take some existing stuff, you jumble it around, you like come up with a few things. Like, hell, maybe you frickin' add an Atlas Master or do the jumble and Atlas Master stuff, like Mark was saying earlier, like as a league, and you know, just little stuff like that that you can do that doesn't take too long to make it sort of worth playing again. But really, the main reason we want people to be playing again is so that they can test all the new balance and changes to kind of core systems that we're changing.
whatever the league end up will be something that has the least amount of impact on the team doing the balance, right? So as long as we're not using their time to then not solve the things they need to solve, that will be a big thing. But you know, just things that are hard to even think about. If there is an economy reset, well, then we have to look at Runes of Elder, how it succeeded, how it failed, and integrate it into core. If it's fully successful, add an Atlas passive tree for it, you know, all of that stuff. So all of that will be happening around the same time, and you know, then we'll have here's what our minus the 1.0 league, you know, it's like here's what our end game is and what our end game looks like, and so we'll just,
Which is the other thing, right? Because who knows what random in-game changes we might then find we need after this is released, and then we have to make it, you know, we have to, presumably any patch we do is going to involve improving that, whatever problems might end up being. Like, it's just stuff like that we're going to have to do.
I had one quick follow-up to weave into this last question, so I'm going to keep it real short. You guys have done an excellent job in the past, you know, track record history of shaking up the meta with character balance changes on a consistent basis, where people are not just playing the new content, but we're playing the game in a different way very often from league to league to league. So the question then goes to the changes coming from 0.5 or between 0.5 and 1.0. Will they also include character power balance and meta shake-ups?
Lots. That's one of the big fixes.
it's like
Lots like that.
two-thirds of what it will contain is that.
Nice.
That's the goal, right? It is 90% of the goal is, and because uniques are ultimately about this, is just how characters are built. Well, let's say 80%, whereas 20% is like improving the content more. So most of it is going to be more oriented around character builds, character powers, etc. But you know, and even to the degree of like, okay, you know, there are some skills that don't feel good to use. There are some, you know,
Yeah.
so it's not just power, it's also feel, how these things feel to play. Are they rewarding to play? When I do A, B, C, D and do my combo piece, does it land or is it just like meh? You know, so going back and revisiting even some of the effects and some of the audio, some of the, and obviously the numbers, you know, like whatever we can do to really just go and say everything we've now, or maybe it's like, you know, there's an A and a B, but we need the C, you know, you need the finale piece to it. And so we go and add that. So you have new skills, modified skills, changed both aesthetically, cosmetically, and in balance. Potential new classes, potential a whole bunch of new uniques. I'm hoping with a bunch of uniques being rebalanced, like all of this stuff across the board. Now, normally, you know, when we have a big reveal, we don't talk about all this stuff because we like everything to be, you know, new. But like, it's pretty easy to talk about all the things that we need to make better, and so that's really what we're going to do. And we'll just hopefully be able to get through it all. But you know how these things go. We don't stop development. So even though full release occurs, we're going to still then balance in 1.1 and 1.2 and 1.3. And, you know, it's just never going to end. So if we don't get 100% right, you know, we'll just keep going.
Oh yeah, W devs, bro. Oh my god, it's so loud.
All right. So we're going to do a couple rapid fires here.
Lost TM's audio there.
Oh, how about now? Am I back? We good?
There we go. There we go.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that.
Good.
I was typing in the chat to tell them to put their questions together, and I hit the mute button. Okay, so we're going to do rapid fire from the chat here, and then we're going to call it a day. So first one here, is there anything added to the game you guys would consider to be like aspirational content? Basically, they're saying extremely difficult content coming to the game, like Ubers, etc.
Look, everyone has their own definition of this, I assume, to some degree, right?
Sure.
Some people are just going to find the farmed pinnacles to be that. In terms of Ubers, we've specifically made sure to not. So you obviously have your quest version, your non-quest version. I didn't want a then Uber grade of that, and the reason is that, not to say it won't eventually happen, is that it puts a bit of a difficult skew on what is considered an acceptable character at a fundamental level, because now they have to be able to do the hardest content in order to be good. And with so much incomplete character balance and stuff we still need to work on and fill the gaps and everything, I wanted to make sure there wasn't just stuff that is like for the, you know, the most OP of the OP of the OP builds, because it was, and this is something that it already was doing, where all of a sudden the viability of a character was being judged by some people against whether or not it can kill a pinnacle, some whether it can complete maps of certain tiers, and some where it can kill the Ubers, and it creates a bit of a difficult thing where it's like, what is considered acceptable? And so the new pinnacles are hard, like for sure. You know, all the fights are pretty damn difficult, and as I said, you can generally juice these things and do like there are ways via the Atlas Masters to take them to slightly next levels. There are things with the different leagues, with the different league trees, to both add rewards and make them harder in the form of multi-choices. And so there are ways to do it, but they wouldn't say they're classically defined as Ubers anymore. I wanted to get away from that. We'll get everything stable, we'll get everything good, and then we'll look at re-adding some of that stuff back. Be it either via an actual Uber fight or be it via, you know, a master or something like that. We'll see.
Quick question about Recombinator was moved out of the game, so we're kind of curious about what's going on with that.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't like it, to be honest. Like it's always been in this annoying balance position where like the numbers that it has to be like to not be completely cracked and broken never been satisfying for the players, and we've never been able to somehow like get that right. So we just decided, you know what, screw it for now. We'll see. We might revisit that again later if we can find some way to change it in some way. But yeah,
I think all the new runes we added, all of the runic ward, it's just so much better. It's so much more understandable, so much more broadly usable. Like not insanely overcomplicated. They're just better. So we were like, look, it had recombinating, it just doesn't need it. Like, here's all the stuff that we can do that is clearly better. I mean, at first we kept it because there's like a little bit of a loss aversion thing, but it's like, okay, look, we're at like, do we really need it at this point? So ultimately, we just decided to axe it, noting that like everything we're adding in its stead is just significant upgrades IMO.
Okay. I'm assuming similar logic with like the expedition shops. They're still in the game, but they're kind of like not the primary
Nope.
focus.
They're gone.
The
Expedition shops are dead.
gone as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, to be
They
fair,
were basically just taken from PoE 1 and like they never really were proper stuff, and
well,
yeah, we just
it was taken and then downgraded and then kind of like, oh, we don't want it to be. They were just not good. So again, it was like we're like, let's get rid of the stuff that's just clearly subpar and replace it with stuff that's just clearly better. Like we don't have to be so attached to it. And, you know.
Sure. Okay. On to the next one here from chat. Corruption. So you guys made like a fairly significant change actually to corruption, where instead of it like randomizing it, it's like a multiplier, right? So you want to divine it first before you corruption. Would you like to speak to that change, though?
Well, that is what we did. Yes. What was the goal there? I guess ultimately liked the idea that when you get I mean, I agree. I understand why some people are going to be like, no, I have to use divines now. Well, yep, that's what you got to do, right? You got to make it much more, a bit of a harder decision to decide. Am I going to divine this item to be its perfect role and then do it, or am I not? And I guess, I don't know. I just prefer it more. It's a bit more hardcore. It's a bit more Val. It's a bit more, costly. And generally speaking, I'm a fan of that, as opposed to just every time I find this, I just Val it no matter what. Which, I just think it's personally better, but I can see people not entirely agreeing with that, and you're right to that opinion, and too bad, I guess. I just 100% prefer it, and I'd say most of the people we spoke to definitely preferred it as well.
I've seen it overwhelmingly liked. I haven't really seen almost anybody say anything like
well,
this.
in that case, then woo, win.
In previous interviews we've had, a conversation has been brought up multiple times, has been inflation and wanting a divine sync, and every time the comment has been, we need more uniques, we need more interesting uniques to divine orb, and I never really felt that it really did that job enough. And I think that with this change alone and continuously adding more uniques, you might actually hit the spot where this is doing exactly what we've been screaming for the past year.
Right.
Speaking of divines, one thing that came up was divine orbs are now more common, which was one of the patch notes. I mean, small line, big decision. So is that there to balance out like the changes of the Atlas, and less Quan? It's really not that more common, or what's that line mean?
It's definitely more common, divine orbs. I'm almost tempted to not mention the reason why we did that. But I don't know how you feel about that, Mark. Sure. All right.
Just do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, all right. So basically, okay, so this is going to sound ultra dumb, I suspect, to some people, so we'll see how this goes. But okay. So the temple, right? The temple had ridiculous amounts of loot going on due to snake strategy and all that sort of shit. So there was stuff like going that, right? So basically there's this concern that we had that people are going to be like, okay, so the temple is obviously nerfed, right? Like snake strategy no longer a thing. Like, it means that like, and so then what we believed was going to happen is immediately people are going to be like, oh, previous league I got X divines per hour and now I'm getting Y divines per hour, and like just annoying shit like that. And so we're like, if we just change the drop rate of divines, nobody will be able to make the comparison anymore. And there won't be like this ability to say like this thing about that. So now I just want to know I just want you to know, by the way, that the troll answer that we legitimately thought we might do for a second is, what if we just removed divines from the game? That was like a legitimate troll answer that we had as like the opposite of this. But instead of doing that, we're like, okay, no, let's make them more common. They're not like, it's not like they're dropping like candy or anything, right? But they are like, they're an amount more common that is like such that that doesn't make them quite comparable anymore. And yeah, that's just down to the fact that divines, for whatever reason, are the thing that people use as the sort of way that comparing loot. So because the loot is kind of like there's a lot of changes all over the loot everywhere, you'll kind of I guess it just makes the whole thing less comparable, and yeah, that is truly part of the reason why we did that. But yes, we do want to divine syncs as well, which is the Varwarp thing. So yeah.
All right, well, I'll do one more here, and we'll call it right. 2 hours and like 35 minutes here. So just a real common one that keeps popping up is people are just asking about performance improvements. Like with every league, you guys typically do quite a bit of performance improvements. Are we expecting that going in 0.5? I know you talked a little bit about Steam Deck, for instance, but console, PC, all of it.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, look, there have been changes, but I wouldn't say that they're revolutionary to the point that I would call them out specifically as like we made big performance improvements. Like there's just the sort of usual iteration that we do. One of the big things we've been really trying to fight has just been this annoying freaking driver device removed thing, which maybe people don't even know what that is, but like sometimes the game will freeze and then it reboots the graphic stuff and then it all comes back, like that thing. And like we haven't fixed it yet. We're still looking into it. It's just been like the engine team has been just banging their head against it for so long now. Like we're actually at the point now, by the way, where like Nvidia told us a couple of days ago, we want you to ship us, like air freight us a PC that reproduces this. It's like the thing. So now we're going to steal one of our PCs and send it to Nvidia to see if that will get the ability to work out what's going on. But like, yeah, there's been a lot of trying to sort out like
Holy
stuff
shit.
and like work on crashes and that kind of thing. So there's less like performance in the sense of like, frame rate higher. But we still will be doing more about that and like the O5X patches and that kind of thing.
Okay, you know what I like? One last kind of random question here, which I don't know if you have an answer for, but I'm going to try. Okay, I know Hex Blast was the skill people were using before. It got changed at one point. It really hasn't hit a point in which it's really seen much use. I know it was beloved by some people out there. I know you might not have the answer off the top of your head, but could we see some love for Hex Blast or Fix or Revert or anything at some point? Like, where's your stance on that skill?
I have not thought about that one for a while, I have to admit. So it'd be one of those things that would look at an O5X timeline, I would say.
Sure.
Because, yeah, it's just, if it's not working and people aren't using it, then that'll be one of the things we want looking to buff, I suspect.
Okay, I'll just throw that there. All right, well, that's it. Oh, go on.
I was going to say the Chaos Hits and Chaos Dots just needs a whole bunch of love, and reviewing all the skills and the mechanics adjacent to it is just part of that. So, there'll be some adding skills, some changing of roles, so like anything could happen really, but it is on the radar for sure.
Okay. Well, there we go. We could go all day, but we're 2 hours and 40 minutes in, so I think we'll call it here, boys. I would say thanks for your time. You guys went really in depth on a lot of stuff, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So, thanks for the opportunity and the answer, and for taking your Sunday. I know you guys are at home, so chat seemed to enjoy that one as well. So, thank you guys.
Excellent. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, and hope everyone enjoys the league. And what's it, 6 days now or something? However long it is.
6 days.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
See you later.
The new Crispy Farm Pan, only at Pizza Hut.
Nice.
Crispy.
All right, and then we're gonna watch a couple more videos. This video came out yesterday about rune crafting.
These are my life's work. The more I studied, the more I began to see similar shapes in the stars above. It was then that I dedicated myself to becoming a rune seeker.
As Pharaoh so kindly explained, runes are very powerful and ancient inscriptions, and they can be socketed into your items to grant them more power. During the League, inscribing symbols into remnants will let you choose between a bunch of different crafting runes that you can use to enhance your items. When you come across a remnant, it has a number of slots ranging from 2 to 7. The more slots, the more powerful the remnant
Well, which
becomes,
we found out 10
but the
technically.
more options you'll have to choose between. At the start of the game, you might find yourself crafting simple damage or resistance runes that are available at a lower level than you would normally be able to get them, giving you a decent power boost. But things quickly get more interesting. There are 22 runes for adding or modifying Runic Ward, a new resource that can protect you from death. Using these runes, you can add an extra defensive layer, or turn your Runic Ward into an offensive weapon using Kalguran runic skills. There are also 13 runes that add powers specific to weapon types, like this one which gives a chance for grenades to explode a second time. Or this one, which gives you a new buff called Druidic Prowess, when heavy stunning enemies.
Damn.
In addition, there are 22 runes designed to give you power at low levels, like this one, which gives you a bunch of elemental resistances.
Nice.
Or this one, which gives you a ton of spirit.
Sheesh.
These runes are designed to be powerful, but drop off in value as you level up. They're great for power leveling a second character in the league.
Nice.
We also have 6 runes that can be used to expand the pool of modifiers.
Hold
used
on.
with-
Hold on. Span the Uhtred Siderius. Rune limited to 1. Soccer bound boots can roll chronomancy modifiers. That sounds dope. Gloves can roll marksman modifiers. Gloves can roll decay. Body armors can roll soul modifiers. Weapon can roll destruction. Berserking. Interesting.
Doing high-level crafting. So for example, you can socket Katla's Gloom into some gloves, and it will enable the crafting of a bunch of new decay modifiers that can be used for damage over time builds. After socketing one of this type of rune, use regular Exalts or Chaos Orbs to try and craft the new mods. There are also several runes that have one-off powerful effects on items, but are bound forever into the socket. Like
Whoa.
this one, which allows any item to gain another suffix.
Woo!
Or
What?
this one, which allows you to create a jewel socket.
What the fuck? Yo.
Or this series of runes that can convert any elemental mod from one element to another.
That's insane.
There's even a rune that can upgrade any other rune, allowing you to upgrade them beyond the normal limit.
Yo.
The last one I want to show you today is Aldur's Legacy, a special rune that can be socketed into any Kalguran or Ezomite unique to destroy it, but create a new rune that takes some of the properties of that unique. So for example, use this on a Trample Toe to create a Legacy of Trample Toe rune. Socket into any boots and, just like the unique it came from, you'll deal 10% of overkill
What
damage to all enemies
the
in a 2-meter
fuck?
radius.
I mean, they talked about
How
that,
about
but
the Legacy of Twisted Empyrean? Destroy a Twisted Empyrean, and you can add cold damage based on your maximum mana to any weapon. With Aldur's Legacy, you can create another 100 or so runes with all sorts of unique
hold on,
effects.
hold on. Let's go back. Hold up.
You can
Hold
create
up.
another 100 or so
Hold on.
maximum mana to any weapon. With Aldur's Legacy, you can create another
Body armors, 250% of melee physical damage taken reflected to attackers. Damn, Thorns build. Stonks go up.
100 or so runes with all sorts of
Helmets, charms, gain 1 charge per second plus 1 charm slot. Wait, so does that mean you can have 4 charm slots? What? Or does that mean that you'll be able to get a really nice 2 charm slot and then get it to 3? It doesn't look like they added a 4th, so assuming it's still 3, but this is going to help bridge that gap if you find, oh, I found this really good +2 charm slot. Fuck. But it only has a 2 charm slot. You'll be able to just add another charm slot. I guess it have to be a really good charm.
unique effects.
When animaces, maximum quality is 40. Woo! That's spicy. Sheesh.
At this point you might be thinking, that's a lot of new runes. And you'd be right. This is the Runes of Aldur after all. But we didn't want the old runes to be left behind either. A significant number of the old runes that were not being used have been buffed as well, making this crafting system significantly better.
Hell yeah.
Explore everything runes have to offer in the Return of the Ancient. This
So hold
crafting
on.
system
That's an augment tab? Oh, I already have that. Never mind. I already have that. But it's going to hold a whole bunch of other stuff too. That's neat. All right, cool.
significantly better. Explore everything runes have to offer in the Return of the Ancients update on May 29th. See you
Hell
there.
yeah. And this will be what the last video we watched for the stream.
Has changed coming into the new league. It actually, they kind of reworked the way it worked. So before, when you evolve something, you have a chance to do nothing, you have a chance to like add an extra socket, or you have a chance to re-roll the stats. So if I was going to hit something like this, and you can just hit it, and maybe we got one of the stats re-rolled. But the thing is they've actually changed the way this mechanic works. So now if it has the chance to re-roll the stats, it doesn't like divine the item first. Now it just hits it with a multiplier. So if I was trying to get like as many attributes as possible, you see I have +5, what I would want to actually do is divine it first until I got +7. So that way when it hits it with the Vol Orb, it's going to actually multiply it either up or down. That way I actually have a chance at breaking the limit. Otherwise, what would happen is it's just going to hit the 5 with a multiplier. Maybe it goes up to 6 or something, and I don't really have that chance to break it. So they're doing this in order to have divine sinks in the game, but it's really important to know, because if you have a really good weapon or something like that, and like maybe I want to try to get another socket on this, maybe I want to divine this weapon until I get like better stats before I actually end up hitting it with a vol, and this one's sanctified, so obviously I can't do it. But just for example, saying you would want to divine your items first before you actually hit it with that Vol Orb. And keep in mind, they've actually removed the Omen of Corruption. So when you do Vol something, that Omen of Corruption where it was guaranteed to do something, that's no longer in the game. So now you actually do have a chance for it to do just nothing when you vol an item. So this is kind of an important change. It's going to change the way you try to min-max your items at the end. It's going to give you more of an opportunity to actually brick some items, and it does mean that you need to make sure you divine your items first. And just to show you that stat line in the patch notes, the corruption outcome that randomizes the numeric values of the modifiers on an item beyond the normal range now multiplies each modifier based on the current value instead of randomizing the value and then multiplying it basically. Number 2, there is a new type of amulet coming to the game. It is called the Absent Amulet. I just had an interview with the devs in which I asked them about the Absent Amulet. This is what it looks like. You can see it's -1 prefix, -1 suffix, which seems bad until you realize it has an implicit here, grant skill level 90 internal rates. Now, apparently the way this amulet works is this is made from the new Genesis tree mechanic. However, it can roll any spirit gem, can be ran into an implicit here. So this is going to be extremely strong, highly farmed, and very expensive for certain type of spirit gems. Like Archmage, for instance, would be a great example of one. So definitely, if you're looking for some chase items, I would look into farming the new Breach mechanic with the Genesis tree. Number 3, the Atlas tree is completely reworked. You can now literally get every single node by going into the new area, the fortress, and completing these maps. For this reason, you probably want to focus on getting the fortress down as soon as you can in order to max out your Atlas, but you can also max out every single league mechanic as well. So it's no longer you're like making decisions. I mean, there will still be some decisions because the notables actually have multiple different things you can pick there. So there will be some deciding, but you can actually fill out the entirety of the tree. So this is sort of a focal point of the game they want for you. They want you to go out and actually have a very clear goal, and that is basically filling out these Atlas trees and completing these quest lines. Now, they did say in the interview, they don't expect everyone to always max out literally all of these. Maybe you leave the fortress somewhere around half or something. You beat, the pinnacle boss, and now you're kind of like exploring the other parts of the game. But if you want to min-max, you can max out this entire thing. Just as an interesting tidbit, the reason they said that they're kind of doing the questline goals is they actually want people to know when they've basically beaten the game and can walk away from the game. They said it's very important for games like this one to actually have defined goals so people know when it's like maybe time to take a break and play another league instead of just kind of endlessly playing like we do currently on the Infinite Atlas until you get frustrated. And if you're somebody who likes to play even further than that, they've actually added challenges to the game. This is a system that was in PoE 1, basically long-form challenges to complete that actually rewards you with microtransactions.
Well, that's dope. Oh, that's right. It offers armor. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Hey, do you mind paying? All I have are nickels. Not at all. Do you change for a nickel?
Unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases. The Active Cash credit card from Wells Fargo. Terms apply.
Number 4, there's actually a build guide system being implemented directly into the game, allowing you to be able to import builds from maybe your favorite creators or from websites, etc. Definitely directly into the game. And so what this actually does is this will allow you to both see like the passive tree portion of what you should actually allocate. It will have notes in the game and show you what skill gems you want. This is just like a full-on import directly. You can even see here notes on the skill gems, etc., of what you're supposed to wear, what item slots, what skill gems to cut, what passive trees to take. So this is going to be a very nice quality of life for people that do like to follow build guide. Number 5, there's a new system in the game that allows you to take uniques and bring up their base level. So you can take like some of those lower level uniques and maybe bring them to a position where they can be used a little bit more. And they're also going to add the new runic ward system on there. So number 5, the tip here definitely is make sure to try out and see what the Runeforger actually does to some of your unique items once the league gets started. Number 6, Runic Ward has been added to the game. This is actually a system of additional life that goes underneath your life. So there's energy shield goes above your life, and you have life, Then you have Runic Ward that goes below your life. And yes, you can have 0 life, and then it would trigger your Runic Ward, and then once that's gone, then you're actually dead. So this is a new system that is added like as implicits basically on gear, and it should be on some unique items, etc. through the rune forging system we just covered. But make sure to actually get your Runic Ward. This should help you with another defensive layer if you're doing a build that uses Runic Ward. Just some additional health. We don't have life on the tree really, so this might be another way to get a little bit of health. Another reason you might need Runic Ward is there is actually, they said 25 new, but I actually asked them and they said there's actually 30 new skills that are coming to the game, new spells, etc., that are ones like this, which cost Runic Ward in order to spend. So it's sort of, you know, another type of energy type of system, mana type of system really is what it is for these new skills. Now these skills are supposed to be like sort of supplemental and help out some of your builds, but also notably they have no attribute requirement, so you can slot these in when you get them and just spin your Runic Ward in order to use them. Some of them look pretty cool. Number 7, you can now price check items directly in the game. Control Alt click an item and it will actually bring it up and search for it in the market itself, where you can adjust the parameters. This will allow you to immediately be able to price check an item without needing any type of, you know, third-party application and see what similar items are actually going for. Now, if you can't find one with exactly these top ends, you can always lower the lower end or increase the top end a little bit in order to find some similar type of items to get an idea of the price. Now, you can always still use your third-party apps if you want to, if they're just a little bit easier for you, but now this is actually cooked into the game itself. Number 8, maybe look into the new Monk Ascendancy, the Martial Artist, because this looks absolutely insane. It has this Stone of Ascendancy, which basically changes every single unique fist, as well as rare fists that you can make. Basically, your gloves. I shouldn't call them fists. The gloves, okay? They change all of them to do all kinds of unique modifiers or actually just be really strong. If you look at this showcase, they actually showcase these gloves here. I mean, look at these gloves, 326 energy shield, 1142 evasion. You can see, you know, more global ES and evasion modifiers, attack damage gained is extra, just straight up flat critical strike chance. The Martial Artist Ascendancy looks absolutely nuts, but it's not the only one. Gimline Legionnaire got a change, which adds on additional quality effects. Looks like sort of handcrafted quality effects for each one of the skill gems. And the Chronomancer got an extremely good defensive node here, as well as another node that gives a 20% chance to repeat or echo some spells. But also the Spearwalker, the one that I am actually going to play, has the ability now to tame, you know, this is the newest sentence, has the ability to tame unique beast bosses, basically, and you can actually use them yourself. So this is what I'm going to be starting. Looks super fun. I don't think it's going to be as strong as some of the other stuff, but it just looks really fun. So maybe look into some of the new Ascendancy changes and the new Ascendancies to see if there's something you're really interested in. And number 10, we actually know the Acolyte of Cholula, otherwise the Chalupa, as most people call it, is actually getting a hidden, like, secret Ascendancy, sort of like the Abyssal Lich. They mentioned this in the Destin interview, so keep your eye out for that. We don't know how that actually happens yet, but you're supposed to commune with the Dreamer in order to actually get that to unlock. So we'll find out exactly what that Ascendancy entails later. That's it. 10 fun things you should know for the upcoming league. Hope you have fun. It launches May 29th. See you on the lives.
All right, chat. That's going to do it for me. I'll see y'all. If I stream tomorrow, it'll be a very short stream. It'll be like, we'll probably play one like game of League of Legends, 2 games of League of Legends. It'll be a short stream. I don't know. Maybe. What's tomorrow? 28? Yeah. But it's also very